Brotherly Low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in the second segment by Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Best. We're going to be chatting with him about how we're seeing a little bit of a dynamic with regards to home court advantage and how much/little it means in conference play. Some of these teams have dealt with a little bit of injury to begin the season. Is there a little bit of upside with them? We'll talk a little bit about the American Conference and dive in on a few games for Thursday. In the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Not necessarily a smorgasbord of ranked teams in action on Wednesday, and we had a lot of teams playing out there on the West Coast, so some of those results might not be able to quite get to because I do need to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, but you did see Vanderbilt go down for the first time all season long. Texas, they are back, 80-64, the final as for Vanderbilt. They were missing Frankie Collins in this game. They will be for a while, and they win the turnover battle 15-10, but for Texas, they do a nice job going 7-17 from 3, and Texas just slammed base of Vanderbilt on the boards 42-24. They win that battle. Mateus Volketaitis was able to supply 22 points in this game for Vanderbilt. They go 9-25 from 3, but with regards to their 2-point shooting, they go 13 out of 35, so that was a little bit less than tremendous for them as Duke Miles 21 points, but the rest of the team, they did not necessarily have the world's greatest results here. For Texas Tech, they get the win, but no cover over Utah. 88-74, the finals. Utah actually goes 12 of 25 from 3-point. Kino Dawes was able to supply 18 points. For Texas Tech, another nice performance here out of JT Toppin. Double-double with 31 points, 13 rebounds, first in their 7 assists. And for Texas Tech, they do a solid job winning the rebound battle by a count of 41-28. They go 13 of 31 from 3. Christian Anderson, 26 points from 3, but they had one guy out the bench play more than 3 minutes at Tyron Bryan, and he only supplied 2 points, so a little bit of depth issues out there. No issues for these guys, though, as Illinois, they go on the road. They get the win and cover over Northwestern by a count of 79-68 for Illinois. They go 11 of 30 from 3 with Tomislav Ivicic, who's been banged up all season long, hasn't been himself. 21 points, 7 rebounds. He goes 4 of 10 from 3-point for Northwestern. They go 9 of 25 from 3. Nick Marnelli did his thing with 20 points, and Jaden Reed, 28 points. The rest of the team, a combined 20, so they needed a little bit more there. Northwestern wins the turnover battle 8-7, but they lose that rebound battle by a count of 33-30 for UNC. They get up at the half against Stanford, and the offense looked good. Defense fails them here, though. 95-90 the final as Stanford. 16 out of 28 from 3. Abuka Okore, 36 points, one of the more underrated freshmen in all of college basketball. Ryan Archibald, he was able to supply 20 points, 5 of 9 from 3-point. And North Carolina, they go 6 of 16 from 3, but they have themselves to blame a lot for this loss. 20 out of 32 at the charity stripe for North Carolina. They win the rebound battle by a count of 33-23, as in this one, Caleb Wilson, 9 rebounds, 26 points. Henry Vassar was able to supply 6 rebounds, but no dice here for North Carolina on the road. A lot of dice for Arkansas, laying basing South Carolina, though. 108-74 the final. Michi Johnson, 29 points. He goes 3 of 6 from 3. Rest of the team, well, they win a combined 4 of 24 from 3-point range. And for Arkansas, they go 8 of 21 from the outside. Have to love what you got off the bench from Malik Thomas, who was able to go for 21 points, 8 of 9 from the floor. And for Arkansas, they do a nice job winning that turnover battle 16-4. So they were able to really take it to the Gamecocks in this one. Also, the Georgia Bulldogs, they had to take it to them 97-95. Ole Miss in overtime. They figure it out for a win that they so desperately needed with A.J. Soar coming down off the bench. 26 27 points, 2 of 6 from 3, and Ole Miss 11-24 from the outside. Ole Miss loses a rebound battle 42-37, and the calling card for this Georgia team has been winning the turnover battle, but even up 9-9, and Georgia's been rough with their three-point shooting, and it actually came alive in this game. Jeremiah Wilkerson, 6 of 12 from 3, 32 points. Team as a whole, 15 out of 35 from three-point range, but if you look at what they did down low, they went 12 out of 37 on their two-point shots. So Chris Beard's bunch, they get it done. Purdue gets it done, but not with a cover. 79-72, the final. As for Iowa, they hold in there thanks to just efficiency. 12 of 25 from 3. Now, Iowa does lose the turnover battle 13-9, but they actually did an okay job on the glass. Purdue wins that battle 26-23. Daniel Jacobson, 9 rebounds for Purdue, but you saw Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer have solid performances. A combined 12 assists and 3 turnovers. Smith, 16 points, Fletcher Lawyer, 11, but to the credit of Iowa, Bennett Sturz was able to throw in there 19 points, so they don't get the win, but Iowa, solid performance on the road as they were able to get a nice quality cover out there. If you're looking at teams that are outside the top 25 that had themselves a night, how about UCLA going on the road? They get a nice win and cover against Penn State in a slug of games, 71-60, the final, as you had one big performance for UCLA. Trent Perry, 30 points, 12 of 12 at the charity stripe for Penn State, 4 of 22 from three-point range. That's just not going to cut it. Quite a few turnovers. UCLA had 14 of them. For Penn State, they had 12, but how about the free throw shooting percentage? UCLA, 21 of 21, blackjack for them at the free throw line. Penn State, 16 out of 17 at the free throw line. Unfortunately, could not knock down their threes, so UCLA, they get a quality winner out there. You saw St. Louis just continue what has been an incredible season for them. Win and cover against Fordham. This time they do it on the defensive side of things, 78-56, the final, as Fordham just 6 of 26 from three-point range. For St. Louis, Robbie Avila, didn't really even have too great of a game. 9 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, but for St. Louis, just 6 turnovers in this game. They go 12 of 30 from three-point range. They got slowed down by Fordham, but even playing at Fordham's real pace, they were able to find a way to persevere in this one, so that was a nice quality winner for them. Also a nice quality winner for St. Joe's. It's been a rough season for them. 68-64, they're able to take it to St. Bonaventure despite the Bonnies being away. Frank Mitchell come in there. He gave the team 8 rebounds, 22 points, but for St. Joe's, who's been rough from three-point range, 8 of 24 from the outside, 14 out of 16 at the free throw line. They do lose their turnover battle 13-10, but in this game, they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done. If you're looking trend-wise at the top over team in all of college basketball, that would be Denver's, and they pioneer yet another over. For the Denver team, how about now 15 overs, 1 under and 1 push, 98-87. They win and cover against Oral Roberts, as for Oral Roberts, they just let Denver be able to run roughshod from three-point range, 12 of 24 from the outside. Not a lot of inefficiency here, just 6 turnovers for Oral Roberts, 9 for Denver. Oral Roberts only goes 8 of 26 from three-point range, and Carson Johnson, who has been rock solid for the Denver team thus far this season, he was able to come in there. He supplied the team with 33 big points. That's obviously your top over team in all of college basketball. If you're looking at your best team against the spread, where you're not going to be seeing them until Thursday in Portland State, who's been an incredible 10-1 against the spread, but Denver not too bad themselves. They're now 11-5 against the spread. We hit upon most of the big teams against the spread that have been able to get the job done all season long. Iowa's now 12-5 against the spread, as they were able to get the cover against Purdue. You also have Arkansas now at 12-5 against the spread, and St. Louis 10-5-1 against the spread. So those teams have been relatively rock solid right now. Your toilet bowl teams in all of college basketball, UTSA, meet the Roadrunners. They have certainly been one of them, and we'll talk a little bit more American in segment number 2 with our good friend Rob Donaldson, but they get it taken to them by Rice. We give our ode to Lane Kiffin, go Owls on this night. This by a count of 89-73, and for Rice, they put up 51 points in the first half, and they have been an awful offense thus far this season. For Rice, 16 out of 31 from three-point range. UTSA, they go just 8 of 28 from the outside, and for UTSA, they play even up 9-9 in terms of turnover battle, but Rice, they do a really nice job finding a way to be able to get it done here. Tulsa, after a little bit of a hiccup to begin American Conference play, they go on the road. They take it to Charlotte, 86-74 the finals. They go 10-21 from three-point range, and for the Tulsa group, you had in this game a trio of guys, Miles Barnstable, Tylen Riley, and David Green, combined for 60 points. These guys have been rock solid in Tulsa. They've been able to have themselves a relatively nice season thus far, so another nice winner out of them. By the way, getting back to Ole Miss, with that cover that we saw from them on Wednesday, now just 5-12 12 against the spread. So been a little bit of a rough season for them, but it appears as though things are improving on that front. If you're looking at some of your top under teams in all of college basketball, right now Cincinnati, 3 overs to just 14 unders. They do seem to be figuring it out. They get that cover against Central Florida on Sunday, and then on Wednesday, they get a nice winning cover against Colorado, 77-68 the final. Appears as though Cincinnati is starting to slow down, and they still can't shoot threes. 3 of 16 from three-point range, but Baba Miller, double-double, 25 points, 11 rebounds for Colorado, 7 of 20 from 3, but Colorado, they lose a turnover battle 17-10, so that was a little bit of a less than amazing performance out of them. And then the aforementioned Central Florida Knights, they take it to Kansas State, 82-73 the final. Kansas State, sub 500 against the spread, been a rough season for them, but for Central Florida, 7 of 15 from 3. They win the rebound battle 35-34. They had on their side Riley Kugel, who was able to give them 19 points. And for Kansas State, they lose the turnover battle 12-10 and 6 of 30 from 3-point range. Abdi Bashir, he goes 4 of 13 from 3. So the rest of the team, 2 of 17 from 3-point range. And you have to be wondering how hot the seat is right now for one Mr. Jerome Tang. So that's going to be very interesting to take a look at, to say the least. The Waves of Pepperdine have actually been a really good under team thus far this season. They have played 5 overs to 13 unders, and on Wednesday they were in action for Pepperdine. They do get the job done against Portland, both with regards to the spread and with regards to the under, 67-63 the final. Portland, 7 of 33 from 3, and Pepperdine, they go 12-20 at the free throw line, so hopefully you didn't lay a bad number there. But Style Phipps, along with Aaron Clark, they combined for a combined 34 points, so they did a rock solid job there on the defense that was able to reign supreme. Illinois, by the way, now 5 overs to 12 under, so they've been one of your better under teams in all of college basketball as well. And then happenings out there in the West Coast, you saw Michigan look quite a bit better than they did in their last few performances. They don't get a cover, but they do get the win over Washington by a count of 82-72, and for Michigan, they go just 5 of 23 from 3-point range, but they win the rebound battle 42-40. They win the turnover battle 12-8, and Washington, they go just 9 of 33 from 3. Kamani Peterson, great name, he was able to go 4 of 12 from 3. He supplied the team with 13 points, and Ade Mera was able to step up for Michigan in terms of a scoring standpoint with 20 points, but you had Morris Johnson give the team a 16-16, 16 points, 16 rebounds, so a little bit better for Michigan, even though they don't get a cover. Currently doing this as Duke is up with about 5.5, 6 minutes remaining, 66 of 51 over Cal, so looks like they should be able to get the win. Cover, that might be a little bit of a question, as Duke has started off 6 of 27 from 3, with Isaiah Evans going 4 of 12 from 3-point range, so everyone has went a combined 2 of 12 from 3-point range. Cameron Boozer has already provided a double-double, and for this Cal team, they themselves have been very cold from 3-point range at 5 of 19 and currently getting blasted on the glass, losing that rebound battle as I'm currently doing this by 14. BYU looking to be able to separate from TCU. TCU had a 36-30 lead with about 10-11 minutes left in the second half. That's 55-49, so we'll see if TCU is able to get the cover. But you've got AJ DeMansa with already 11 minutes remaining in the second half being able to go off in this game for 25 points, 5 rebounds. He has been rock solid, and he's really been ascending here over the last few weeks. And then a few other games that went final. Arizona, they get a test from Arizona State. Arizona State actually had the lead at the half, but for the Sun Devils, they do fall in this game, but 89-82 was the final, so a nice quality cover there for Arizona State. 11-25 for 3. Mo Odom, 23 points, and for Arizona, they were bailed out by Toby Awaka off the bench, going off for 25 points, 8 of 8 at the free throw line. Arizona does win the rebound battle by a count of 39-28, so they avoid the upset, but certainly a little bit more tested than what they were expecting. And then you did have Utah State be able to get it done against Nevada, this by a count of 71-62. I know that there was a little bit of line movement in this game. Most places you're getting a closing line of about 13.5, so a solid cover there for Nevada, who's been one of the best teams in the country in terms of taking care of the ball. Utah State has been one of the best teams in terms of generating turnovers, and for Utah State, they do win that turnover battle 14-11, but for Nevada, 7 of 16 from 3-point range, and Mason Foslov was able to supply 26 points on a day where MJ Collins a little bit off with 14 points. And then if you're looking trend-wise at what we're getting in college basketball right now, this is with a few of those late games pending out here on the West Coast. Again, do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. The over rate is back above 50%, 50.2%, 1,449 overs, 1,439 unders. Underdogs rating at about 50.8% against the spread, 1,466, 1,421. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, the underdogs, they have been reigning supreme, hitting at nearly 56%, 193 and 152 against the spread. The over rate, it's nearly 54%, 186 overs, 159 pushes, and a few pushes along the way. 186 overs, 159 unders, and a few pushes along the way. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're getting trend-wise. Coming next, but if we do chat it up with our good friend Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the Rob's Best Bets show, does great work over at Underdog Fantasy, and so much more right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Rob Donaldson aboard. He does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he's doing a great job on the football end as well as college football coming to an end, but we've got ourselves some great playoff action. Rob, he is such a wealth of knowledge over at Underdog Fantasy, and a man that you're able to follow on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And, I know we've been kind of going down this college basketball journey. We've been seeing the non-con slates. Now we're seeing some awesome conference games as well. And it really starts to feel like the season's starting to round into the fold. We know who the true contenders are. We know who kind of the bubble team contingents are as well. And we're getting some really good basketball already here in the middle part of January. It's been pretty fun.
Oh, it has been a lot of fun. And what have you made out of some of these top teams just falling left and right in college basketball? As we saw with Michigan over the weekend against Wisconsin, Iowa State takes a big loss against Kansas. And it just feels like this year in college basketball, it's not quite what we saw last year where those top teams were seemingly invincible. And I think a lot of people thought it was going to be just like last year. But I think that we are starting to see now that perhaps a little bit more parity is returning to the sport.
And honestly, when you look at college basketball as a whole, as we kind of know it every single year, teams get better. And whether that's, for the player chemistry standpoint of players just learning how to play with one another, or from a coaching standpoint, great coaches are going to find their ways to find the wins down the stretch. Or it could be a number of different things in the modern era where roster construction is so crazy. Like you're seeing completely new rosters at completely new universities every single offseason. That kind of comes into frame when you're talking about college basketball not being a linear progression. You're going to have some teams that excel on the front end, go through some awful stretches in the middle, and then kind of vice versa. Awful stretches at the beginning, really kind of heightened stretches in the middle. I think we're seeing that with a team like Wisconsin right now, and potentially with a team like Michigan. Again, we talked about them last time I was on, but the inflated line aspect, yeah, those are going to be there because a lot of teams get that kind of built up energy going on the front end only to kind of hit that plateau line here in the middle.
Yep, I think so as well. And I sort of look at it as being hot to start the season. You cool down a little bit in January/February, but you just want to be crescendoing and plateauing in the month of March. And we shall see if these top teams are able to do so. And I do think that it's also fascinating that we've got a nice year, too, in college basketball as well, with Nebraska still being undefeated. They continue to be very, very impressive. I mean, man, that has been a heck of a run. Now, we're doing this as Georgia's having a little bit of a tough time against Ole Miss, but that's a team that I've been relatively impressed by. It feels like we've got a few SEC teams that are out there. UConn certainly has been outside the top three, but I think we are seeing that they're very dominant once again. And I do feel like these teams, we're going to call it like 4 through 15. I think that there's a lot of firepower with them.
Yeah, and heck, we just saw a team, obviously the Big 12 is loaded with a lot of quality teams, maybe not as many quality teams as we thought, kind of coming into the season, but those elite teams are still there. Well, hey, one of those elite teams in Iowa State just went to the Fog on Tuesday night and got the doors blown off them. So, and that's a team in Kansas where a lot of people have felt a lot of different kind of wavering ways about. And ultimately, maybe Bill Self is just going to be Bill Self. Maybe the fact that roster is getting healthy is going to be what kind of takes the story a hold, down the stretch here. And there's a lot of teams that fall into that bucket of, yeah, we have those, 15 to 25 range teams that have a lot of upside. We can even probably go further down the list and find some more that are just kind of going to end up peaking at the right time here in the coming weeks.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that we've got ourselves a really fun slate that is going to be going down on Thursday because, as I like to say with Thursdays in college basketball, it's not necessarily a lot of sizzle, but you get yourself a lot of steak. We're really not going to be seeing a lot of top 25 teams aside from Gonzaga, but we've got ourselves a lot of really good mid-majors. And what have you been making out of some of these conferences like the Sun Belt, like the Horizon League, as I feel like there's been a lot of pleasant surprises all across the boulevard in terms of mid-major basketball as well.
Yeah, and honestly, one of my favorite takeaways, I think, in just not only mid-major basketball, but in a lot of high major programs as well, is because this new wave of roster construction is so centered around, hey, we went in the portal, we grabbed veteran A, veteran B, veteran C. All of a sudden, you're not kind of worried, and some programs are actually still going through this because they have high-profile freshmen, for example. But a lot of these teams are just old inherently because the guys that they were grabbing from the portal weren't being grabbed from the high school ranks. They were being grabbed from other college programs. And I think one of the things that we're kind of seeing rear its positive head for the new way of roster construction is going on the road in college basketball, which is, one of those things that inherently we've always known it's just a difficult thing to do. It's a change of landscape. It's a change of atmosphere. It can be very hostile. All of a sudden, I think we're starting to see a lot of teams just manage it better than in years past. And I think one of the conclusions I've drawn is look at the lineup. Is it veteran heavy? Are they weathered kind of pros that are coming from high major schools, down transferring, or coming from kind of a lateral position in college basketball to their new school? I think a lot of that's being factored in where, yeah, you're seeing these deceptive lines because the home edge used to be there. Is it still there? I kind of raise that question right now, especially after what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Yep, it certainly has been interesting to take a look at, as we do have Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's the Best Bets and Underdog Fantasy, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And no doubt about it, we are going to have some intriguing games on Thursday. And have there been any conferences in particular that have really been standing out to you? Because we are going to be seeing a lot of those mid-majors. We're going to be seeing like the WAC. I mentioned the Horizon League a little bit before, the CAA. Have there been a few conferences that you've really been able to find some nice edges on?
Yeah, look at the American Conference, and a lot of people might look at the top of that league and they see inherently in terms of like just win-loss percentage, you see Tulsa, you see Tulane, you see Temple. And a lot of people are like, wait, hold on. Is Memphis still here? Is UAB still here? Is North Texas still here? I love it when these types of conferences go through a little bit of like the changing of the guard. In future years, I'm sure Memphis, the way that they spend, will be right back up at top. But as it currently stands, they're not there. And I feel like they're going through a lot of turmoil. North Texas, I don't think they're that kind of team here in year one. And I think also when you're kind of looking at the totality of the league, UAB is still a contender, but they're not they're not like the Jelly Walker teams or the Axel Lendemore UAB teams. This is a wide open league. And so I look at this league and I say, hey, that's a lot of value betting against the brand mentality because North Texas is very beatable. You can probably beat them by margins that you could never beat them in the past. You look at Memphis, I think they're even more volatile, believe it or not, than they have been in years past. And so when those teams are involved in action, it's almost like, hey, take the shot in betting against them with the Charlottes, with the South Floridas, with the Temples, with the Florida Atlantics, and you can probably turn a value. So the American has actually been one of my favorite leagues to bet on here in the early goings.
The American has been a lot of fun, and I have been certainly looking at fading UTSA, meet the Roadrunners, who it has not been a great season for them, to say the least. And for Memphis, it's going to be interesting to see if they bounce back as well. And how do you take a look at a team like a Memphis, where it's been a disappointing season for them, to say the least? They honestly haven't been the world's worst on defense, but on offense, it's not been great. But we also know this about Memphis: whole bunch of injuries, and what they are right now is not necessarily what they were at the beginning part of the season. And perhaps a team like them, Charleston, who's going to be in action on Thursday, I think is a great example of this. Just trying to adjust for teams that have dealt with a lot of injuries, I think it's something that must be done this time of year.
Yeah, and honestly, it's going to be coming to a point when you're talking about a team like Memphis where the players that they accrued and the money that they're spending isn't just to win the American. It's supposed to be a little bit more. They want NCAA tournament wins. That's what the program is pushing for. That's what the program is investing in. It's like Gonzaga and the WCC. You know, Gonzaga is not just trying to win the WCC over St. Mary's. They're pushing for Final Fours, championships. And I think from that standpoint, when you have a group of players who are getting seriously paid and there's that type of investment into the program and those types of expectations, at what point does the confidence get hit and just say, hey, we're quitting on the season? We've seen that with a number of teams over the years, with like a Kansas State, for example, and Jerome Tang. There were championship aspirations. There were Elite Eight aspirations. They didn't even make it back to the tournament the next 2 years. And so I think from that standpoint, we're going to see, start probably more so in February, some teams give up on the season. Now, the teams that are dealing with injuries and getting healthier maybe try to buy low in those spots, but ultimately my viewpoint on those teams is probably just to stay away and let other people kind of dive headfirst into those types of matchups.
Yeah, I do think that it's going to be a very interesting handicap there. There might be some value to be had, but with old Penny Hardaway, you just never know with a team like that. And in terms of the slate for Thursday, are there any games in particular that are really standing out to you, and games that you think that you're going to be betting on?
When you look at the CAA, that's one of my favorite mid-major conferences because of the quality of game-by-game, performance that you get. And we're seeing a really high-profile one between Towson and Charleston. And we know that Charleston kind of went through some early season stretches that were not the greatest. Out of conference in terms of their non-con schedule, they had some downers where it just kind of felt like it wasn't the Charleston of old. Well, now Charleston's 4-0. In the CAA, they're rolling, they're getting healthier, they're playing better ball just in general. And on the flip side, you look at Towson and you're seeing a team that's 1-4 to start CAA play. It feels almost inexplicable given how talented they are, how well coached they are, and even the games that they've lost. It felt like some of those games, notably against Hofstra, Hampton, and last time out they won against Northeastern, it felt like they were on the same level as those teams, even despite losing. How do they perform now that they're at home against the cream of the crop, the spearheading team in the CAA, Charleston? I tend to think that we're going to see their best effort, or eventually it's just going to really fall down a cliff. And I do think that Towson ends up winning tomorrow and covering that 2.5.
And I do think that Towson is going to be a very interesting team, to say the least. And I look at that total of 140.5. Towson, they really like to ugly up games. They like to make things very slow and controlled, and think that there might be some good value there. And there's always great value with getting you on this show, Rob. You do such an amazing job looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. So love to get people at home know what's on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, it's always a blast talking college hoops with you, my man. And for those who are wanting to follow my bets on a night-to-night basis, you can do so on my Twitter/X feed at RobDFB, and also on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Rob Donaldson. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard every single time he joins me. He lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as do some big shots. Your lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does such great work over at the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some big shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conference games first, and then the smaller conferences, those are going to be covered at the bottom, and those conferences today, we've got a little bit of NEC action that is going to be in our lives. On top of that, the Atlantic Sun, and if we have any Southland games, sometimes we do on Thursday, those will be at the bottom as well. So how about if we do get things started? This is 783, 784 Liberty. They are going to be playing host to New Mexico State. New Mexico State is a underdog here of 8.5 points. 141.5 to 142.5 is the total, and I'm going to be in on Liberty. I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite, so want to lay up to 8 with them. It's a New Mexico State defense that last year was really good. They were one of the best teams in terms of guarding the 3-point line, and we have seen a deterioration with that thus far this season for New Mexico State. They're overall about 115th in the country in terms of points per possession allowed, but that team that was so good in terms of being able to guard the arc last year, I mean, it has really went a little bit sour for them, especially recently. First few games weren't too bad, but right now they're checking in with opponents shooting about 36% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot core venue, and this is a Liberty team that they're not going to grab any sort of offensive rebounds. They're outside the top 340 with that regard, but it's a Liberty team that's 18th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percent, shooting 45.4% from 3 at home. I do think that is going to be going downward a little bit, as you're going to have a little bit of lower possession game as well. This New Mexico State team, they're just outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Certainly not fast, certainly not slow. Meanwhile, Liberty 309th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but you've got Brett Decker, who's been decking teams, shooting about 50% for 3, 17.5 points per contest. Zach Cleveland is really the guy that makes things go for Liberty. He doesn't really give you any 3-point shooting, but he's a 6'7" point forward, 11 points, 8.5 boards, 7.5 assists, steal half, block and half per contest. That allows someone like a Kaden Metheny, who gives you 13.5 points to shoot 38.5% for 3. Colin Porter shoots 41% from 3-point range. J.J. Harper is shooting 38.5% from 3-point range, so he does a great job in terms of contributing to all of them. And for New Mexico State, they look to the former Meet Roadrunner to be able to get things going in Jamel Jones, who's been able to supply you with 16 points, 4 boards, pair of assists per contest. Julius Mims is really the only other guy that gives you double figures, 7.7 rebounds per game. He's been able to shoot about 44% from 3-point range, and then you do have some guys down low that are able to do a relatively solid job. Sierra Malonga has been able to give you 5 points, just under a block per contest. Austin Augustina Igwe, he's been able to give you about a block per game. It's dealt with a little bit of injury, but he's been in and out of the lineup here over the last few weeks, and when he gives you some minutes, he's been able to be rock solid down low. But this is a Liberty team that is very content to go bounce away from 3, and even when Liberty does not, they're a top 25 team with regards to their 2-point shooting as well. For New Mexico State, to their credit, they've been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but Liberty has been a top 50 team in terms of taking care of the ball. I think that Liberty, even though they're slow, they're efficient enough to be able to get the job done here. I'm willing to lay up to 8 here with Liberty, and with this total, set mine at a 142.5, south of 141.5. I like the over. 785, 786, it's Mercer. They're going to be on the road against VMI. VMI is a home underdog of 9.5 points. 156.5 to 157.5 is the total, and with Mercer, I did set them as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Things are just rough in general right now for VMI. VMI is the team that's supposed to pride themselves on 3-point shooting, and they are 339th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. And they should be able to find a few second and third chances, as Mercer is right now outside the top 320 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, but it's not a VMI team that necessarily has a lot of size. Now, for this VMI team, a big undoing for them has been Ricky Bradley being out of the lineup. He's missed the entirety of the season, a guy that was expected to give them double figures, but to have TJ Johnson give you 19 points, 7 boards per contest, and he shoots about 34% from 3-point range on volume. You've had Linus Holstrom along with Mario Tatum Jr. both be able to supply about 10 points per game, and AJ Clark does give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but outside of Johnson and Clark, you really don't get a lot in terms of hitting the glass. And while this Mercer team has been an absolute wreck in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, they've been good in terms of being able to generate turnovers. And additionally, VMI 353rd in all of college basketball in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well. Teams are grabbing over 37% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And for Mercer, in terms of turnovers per possession, right now they do find themselves in the top 125 in all of college basketball, with Brody Shoulders doing a nice job in terms of shouldering the load. He may not be the top scorer for this team. That would be the George Mason transfer in Bakara Okoji, who's been able to give you 5.5 assists, 18.5 points per contest, but he does supply you with about 9 points, 7 boards, pair of assists, 2 steals per game, so very good in terms of stuff in the stat sheet. Armani Mighty has been mighty down low with about 2 blocks per contest, shoots 66% from the floor. For a Mercer team that is slightly above average with their 35% 3-point shooting, they've been able to do a solid job themselves of being a top 150 team in terms of their offensive rebound rebound percentage. They've been a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and with this VMI team not doing a great job hitting the glass, not really giving you a lot from the outside, I do think that Mercer is going to be able to overwhelm here, and I do think that the dead possessions are going to be a little bit costly on this total as well. You've got a Mercer team that's looking to play fast, but they're not necessarily looking to play just hair-brainy fast, about 133rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. VMI more around 221st. So set a total of 153.5, like the under, and with Mercer, I'm willing to lay up to 11 with them. 787, 788 on the card. It is James Madison, and they are going to be on the road against Appalachian State, and App State is finding themselves as a very, very slim favorite here of 1-1 points total scheme, 133.5, and I did set a total of a 135.5. I like the over. This is despite the fact that Appalachian State is truly one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. 351st in terms of total possessions per game, and this James Madison team, they're faster than they were last season, but they're still about 233rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, you're going to get a lot of clean possessions on both sides. This James Madison team is not generating any turnovers whatsoever. 356th in terms of turnovers per possession. Meanwhile, you've got an Appalachian State team that's about 325th, so neither of these teams are forcing the issue there. Both of these teams have been pretty solid themselves in terms of taking care of the ball, and for Appalachian State, certainly not a team that is necessarily too trustworthy at the free throw line. Out of 365 teams, they unfortunately rank 365th, but you do have Keshawn Jennings along with Alonzo Dodd. These two guys have been able to combine for about 26.5 points per contest. You've got Jennings being able to shoot 37% from three-point range. Michael Marcus Jr. has been able to shoot about 34% from three-point range as well, and for Appalachian State, what they lack in terms of generating turnovers, they've been able to do with regards to their overall shooting percentages on defense, as they're a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, James Madison has been a little bit more lackadaisical than that. Now, James Madison has also been the better 3-point shooting team, as you've got Bradley Douglas, who comes on over from Georgia Southern. He's done a nice job in tandem with Cliff Davis, as these two guys combine for about 25 points per contest. They combine to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range, and these two guys are both shooting above 75% at the free throw line as well. Douglas is able to give you about 4.5 assists per game. Justin McBride has been that top scorer, 17.5 points, shoots 41% from 3-point range, but outside those main three, you really don't get a lot around the outside. Eddie Ricks has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and on the flip side for Appalachian State, Luke Wilson, he's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game as well. I do think that in this ordeal, you are going to have Appalachian State do a solid job in terms of holding it down a James Madison team that's been about country average with regards to their overall shooting percentages, but it is also a James Madison team that is just allowing a few too many second and third chances. I do think that Appalachian State, a top 150 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, is going to be able to take advantage of this, as for James Madison right now, they check in 186th in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and I think that those second chances offset Appalachian State's horrible free throw shooting percentage. So my line in 1.5, we'll lay up to 1 here with App State, like the over, somebody total 135.5, 789, 790 on the card. Robert Morris is going to be on the road facing off against IU Indy, and IU Indy finds themselves as a home underdog here of 4.5 to 5.5 points, 159.5 to 162.5 is the total, so wide range of totals, and a semi-total at 167.5. I do like the over. Now, there's probably going to be a lot of sloppiness in this game because IU Indy, they're still playing relatively fast. They're a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game, and they're the classic team that likes to gamble for turnovers, as for IU Indy, they're still relatively solid in terms of generating turnovers. In terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis, 48th in all of college basketball, but 350th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, in which if they don't get that turnover, well, they allow a lot of second and third chances on the glass. Outside the top 345 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, teams are grabbing about 38% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Now, you do have a Robert Morris team that has been quite sloppy with the ball. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they do rank 247th in all of college basketball, and you've got an IU Indy team that they themselves have been about country average in terms of taking care of the ball. IU Indy has Kyler D'Agostino, who's been able to do a solid job being able to give this team 15 plus points per contest. He's been a relatively good 3-point shooter, but it is an IU Indy team that just is not going to be able to hold up down low against a Robert Morris team that is in the top 20 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. And Nikolas Chatakoulis has been able to give you about 7 rebounds, 13 to 14 points per game. Additionally, you've got Tashawn Good, who's been Mr. Good, 15 points, 9 rebounds. He's shooting 64% from 3-point range. Alberto Vargas has been able to give you some good versatility as well. But I do think that for this Robert Morris team, they are going to be able to get those second and third chances, which does offset the fact that they have been awful with their free throw shooting. They are shooting 70% at the free throw line. This Robert Morris team will put you on the free throw line. In terms of free throws allowed on a per possession basis, they're a top 25 team in all of college basketball. And IU-Indy, they're about country average, shooting 72% at the free throw line. You've had Maguire Mitchell, who's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. You get mid-30s three-point shooting on Cameron Tinsley, 34.5% three-point shooter, 9.5 points per contest. But Finley Woodward is like the only guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game for this IU-Indy team. With how up-tempo this is going to be, I think that you get a hair-brainy, sort of insane game that Robert Morris, they might commit a lot of turnovers, but when they don't, they're going to get clean looks to be able to get the job done. Sub by line at 5.5. Willing to lay up to 5 here with Robert Morris, and I like the over. Sub by total at a 167.5. 791, 792 on the card. Old Dominion is going to be on the road against Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern does find themselves as a 5.5 point favorite on this game, 161.5 to 162.5, and with Old Dominion, I did set them as a underdog of 7.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it with Georgia Southern. Now, Georgia Southern has been able to do a good job in terms of cranking up their tempo, while Old Dominion, they're about a mid-tempo team. Old Dominion, 138th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Georgia Southern team that's just flat out looking to gun it right now. In terms of total possessions per game, they are number 19 in all of college basketball, and they've been quite good in terms of being able to generate turnovers. And to the credit of this Old Dominion team, they're not a team that has really been out of sorts with the ball. They're a top 100 team in terms of ball security, though. In a road/neutral venue, they do fall outside the top 150 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Old Dominion not going to generate any turnovers whatsoever. 330th in the country in terms of being able to generate turnovers on a per game basis. And Georgia Southern, they are a top 75 team with this regard. And for Georgia Southern, I do think that they find a way to get the job done, mainly because they just have a little bit of a better backcourt in this ordeal, as you've got Spud Webb, great name, who's been able to give you between about 16 to 17 points per game. Tyron Moore was their top scorer 2 seasons ago, left last year for UAB. He's back. He's been able to give you 13 points. He's been a mid-30s three-point shooter for a Georgia Southern team that overall, shoot about 32.5% from three-point range, but they do a pretty rock-solid job in terms of taking care of the ball themselves. Top 65 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. Now, for this Georgia Southern team, they are giving up a lot of second and third chances. They've been well outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but Old Dominion, who was so good in terms of being able to hit the offensive boards last season, they are now 324th in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, despite the fact that they bring back a lot of guys from a season ago. Caleb Swan-Roger, the big man who comes over from Maryland, he's been able to give you about 4.5 boards, 7 points per contest. You do have Jordan Battle in the fold now, 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per game, and he's the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Now, he's been able to shoot about 39.5% from three-point range as well, but Robert Davis, a 15-point per game scorer from season ago, he's been playing, but he's clearly not been 100%, 10.5 points per contest. I do think that this is going to be a relatively up-tempo game, but for Old Dominion, they've been outside the top 3 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. I don't think that they're going to be able to have a lot of success there. I think that Georgia Southern going to be able to do just enough in terms of generating turnovers to find a way to persevere, get the job done. Sub by line at 7.5. I'm willing to lay up to 7 with Georgia Southern, and I'm in on the under. Sub by total 155.5, 783, 784. It is Hofstra, and they are going to be on the road against Stony Brook, and Stony Brook does find themselves as a home underdog of 7.5 points, 134.5 to 135.5 is the total line. For Hofstra, I did set them as an 8-point favorite, so 7.5 is my max lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's a Hofstra team that's in the top 30 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're doing a nice job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. They are 75th in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound, and when you've got a guy like Cruz Davis, that makes you all the more versatile, as for Mr. Cruz Davis, he's cruised his way to give you 21.5 points per contest, shoots 44% from three-point range. German Plitnoff, he's been able to shoot about 38.5% from three, supplies the team with 9 points per contest victory. Otinu has been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game, and Silas Sunday's a true 7-footer that's able to give you right around about 5.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. So by committee, these guys have done a good job of helping out Davis, along with Preston Ebman and James Boogie Patterson in the backcourt. Ebman 15 points, 4 assists, and then Patterson, he's able to supply about 9 points per game as well. Hofstra does sometimes get a little bit out of sorts with regards to turnovers, but this is a Stony Brook team that, while their overall shooting percentages on defense have been pretty rock solid. Right now, they're a top 175 team in terms of opponents, 3-point and 2-point shooting percentage. This is also a unit that they aren't necessarily the world's greatest in terms of being able to hold you to a one-and-done possession. They've been outside the top 225 in terms of defensive rebound percentages. The lone guy in the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game is Richard Goods, and he's been Goods at being able to give you about 6.5 points, 6 boards, 2 assists per game, but it's also a team that's about country average with their 3-point shooting percentage at about 33.5% from the outside. Eric Pratt, he comes in from UW Milwaukee, 16 points, 3 assists, steal, 4 boards per contest, nice stat sheet suffer. And then Rob Brown, the third, comes over from Nichols, 37% 3-point shooter, but it's still been very hit or miss for this offense, especially with Colin O'Connor missing 10 games this season. He's been out since November, and he was giving the team right around about 9 to 10 points per contest, so that's caused a little little bit of disjointedness in the backcourt, and this is a Stony Brook team that just does not execute inside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that allows Hofstra to be able to find a way to persevere, get the job done, and Stony Brook just does not find a way to get to the free throw line either outside the top 300 in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. I do think that as a result, Hofstra finds a way to get it done in a game that should be relatively low possession. Both of these teams outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game did set a total here of a 136. So along with laying the number here with Hofstra, I'm going to be in on the over, as I do think that there's a propensity for this game to have some late game fouling. 785, 796 on the card. It is UW Milwaukee playing goes to Oakland. Oakland, a 2.5-point road favorite. So on this game, it is 165.5. Say UW Milwaukee as a 1.5-point favorite. I do like them here outright on the money line. It certainly is a little bit of a strange situation right now for UW Milwaukee because Danilo Janovic, their top rebounder and one of their top scorers, giving you about 12 points per contest. He was out of the fold in that game against IU Indy, and the team was already dealing with an injury as their top scorer from beginning the season in one Mr. Seth Hubbard has been dealing with injury as well, but you are still going to have Amar Ulyagard in the backcourt who's been able to slide about 12 points per contest, and for this UW Milwaukee team, they do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and both of these teams have a similar weakness. Both of these teams are just getting absolutely lambasted from three-point range, as UW Milwaukee is currently outside the top 280 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Oakland is outside the top 280 as well, and this has been an Oakland team that has shot it relatively well from three-point range. In a roadside-shoot-score venue, they shoot 34.9% from three-point range. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball. Brody Robinson has been great. Coming over from UT Arlington, he's able to give you 15-plus points. He shoots about 40% from three-point range, so he's been a nice little bit of stat sheet suffer there. But even though Oakland has been pretty solid with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, where this team is really looking to make their hay is down low. Oakland is actually a top 60 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range in a roadside shoot-score venue. Meanwhile, it's a UW Milwaukee team that has been neither here nor there. They take quite a few threes when they're at home, but this is also an Oakland team that, despite the fact that you've got Bari Navarura, who's been relatively solid down low, give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Isaac Garrett is able to give you about 15 points, 7 rebounds per game. They are just getting blowtorched down low. They are outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, Oakland doing a nice job getting the free throw line, top 100 team with that regard. And you've got a Milwaukee team that is relatively mid-tempo in terms of total possessions per game. This Milwaukee team checks in about 209th. Oakland has been looking to crank up the tempo a little bit more. They're up to about 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But I do think that with the way that Oakland does not give themselves second and third chances, they are well outside the top 235 in terms of their offense rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Milwaukee team that, even without Janovic, I do think that they're going to be able to find a way to be able to get some second and third chances. They are currently 70th in terms of offense rebound percentage. I do think that those second and third chances went out. I do think that you get a little bit of late game fouling here, and UW Milwaukee, I think, is going to be able to knock down those free throws. So with Milwaukee, I set them as a 1.5-point favorite. I like them on the money line. Did set my total here at a 165.5. So we're going to wait on a little bit of line movement. I was seeing before a 164.5, 165. If we could get a 165 or less in on the over to go with the money line of UW Milwaukee. 787, 788 on the card. It is UTEP. They're on the road against Delaware. Delaware is a 1.5 to a 2.5-point favorite. 126.5 to 127.5 is the total. I mean, Delaware the 5-point favorite. I do like them here on the sideline. You got a UTEP team that I just really don't like this team because they get absolutely lambasted on the glass. They're actually giving themselves a few offensive rebounds. They're about 185th in the country at Delaware. They are not doing a good job on the glass. Right now, 360th in all of college basketball in terms of percent of their missed shots. They're resulting in an offensive rebound, but they go up against a UTEP team that is always gambling for turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, is a UTEP team. They are 71st in all of college basketball, but if they don't get a turnover, they leave themselves very, very vulnerable with regards to both their 2-point and their 3-point shooting percentage defense. This UTEP team, 238th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Delaware, they're actually a top 180 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They strangely fall outside the top 200 with that regard. You got a pair of relatively slow teams with Delaware right now 341st in terms of total possessions per game. This UTEP squad right around about 327th, but for Delaware, they've been dealing with injuries all season long. Getting back Justin Fernandez has been big for them. He's been able to give the team over 40% 3-point shooting in the games that he's been able to play. He's been able to give you about 14.5 points per contest. Christian Bliss, along with Tyler Hauser, both give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. And Bliss, as long as blissfully, been able to give you about 15 points, 6.5 assists per contest. So I like his game. McCall Memory, he's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game as well. And for the Delaware team, they've been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a UTEP team that has really struggled from the outside, including their games against non-D1 teams. They're 300th in the country and 3-point shooting percentage at 31.2%. This is a team that's outside the top 250 in terms of their own ball security, as Elijah Jones has been able to give you about 14 points, He shoots only about 31% from 3, and Kasim Watson has been able to shoot about 39% from the outside, supplies the team with 12 points per game, but he is the only other top 6 scorers that shoots above 31.1% from 3-point range. In a tight spot, this team shoots 67.5% the free throw line. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, and this team has been outside the top 225 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I think that allows Delaware to be able to get the job done. Do think that you get a little bit of late game fouling as well to be able to help you out with this total line with Delaware at the free throw line. They shoot about 72.5% the free throw line. So, me Delaware a 5-point favorite. I'm willing to lay the small number, and on the over sub, I total 131, 799, 800 on the card. It is Drexel, and they're going to be on the road against Monmouth. And Monmouth does find themselves as a 5.5-point favorite total on this game, 129.5 to 130. I mean by total 133.5. I do like the over. Now, you've got a pair of teams that are not really going to be looking to push a lot of tempo. This Drexel team, in terms of total possessions, ranked 349th in all of college basketball. Monmouth a little bit faster, but certainly not playing at warp speed, 265th in the country there. And for Monmouth, they have been not good with their 2-point shooting percentage. They are outside the top 295 with that regard. And this is a Drexel team that they do a nice job being able to give themselves some second and third chances. They've been a top 85 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. And for Drexel, they're a little bit better with their 3-point shooting percentage than they've been in the past. Shooting about 34% as a collective. Only one double-figure scorer. That'd be Shane Blakely, 14.5 points, 3 assists. He shoots about 35% from 3-point. And Eli Beard, well, he's been able to give the team 40% 3-point shooting, but you don't have really anyone other than Garfield Turner that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. You've had Valim Garcia Edson give you about 5 boards, 5 points per contest as well. And I do think that Monmouth, with having a guy in Doc Mortar, is able to give you a block per contest. This Monmouth team, they're actually, in terms of block shot rate, a top 15 team in all of college basketball, with their main scorer in Jason Rivera Torres being able to give you versatility, 16 points, 8 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, blocking out per contest. They're going to be able to hold in there, and this is a Monmouth team that they are going to allow a few good looks from the outside the top corner with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that for Monmouth, they do find a way to be able to persevere here against a Drexel team that, if they go to the free throw line, this Drexel team is just all sorts of brutal there. Right now, Drexel 64.7% at the free throw line, and while this is a Drexel team that does a great job on the glass, they are outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 225 in terms of generating turnovers, so do think that Monmouth gets some clean possessions, and they find a way to pull this one out. I did set my total at a 133.5, so I like the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 here with Monmouth. 801, 802 on the card. Detroit is going to be on the road against Northern Kentucky, and Northern Kentucky is a 10.5-point favorite total on this game. It is 158.5. I did set Detroit as an underdog here of 8.5 points, so we'll take the 10 plus with them. For Detroit, the 3-point shooting has been absolutely awful this year. They're outside the top 320 in terms of the 3-point shooting percentage. They do have one nice headline scorer, though. That'd be TJ Nadeau. TJ Nadeau, he's been able to supply the team with about 13 points per contest from 3-point range. He shoots 46% from the outside, and Orlando Lovejoy, even though he doesn't give you anything from the outside, he's a nice athlete stuff for 13 points, about 4 assists per game. The big undoing for a lot of teams against Northern Kentucky is the fact that Northern Kentucky does an amazing job generating turnovers. They're a top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this is always a Northern Kentucky team that they gamble a little bit for turnovers, and they also are a team that plays games where you get a lot of second and third chances. Northern Kentucky, relatively solid on the offensive glass. They're 106th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Detroit, even better. Detroit is 73rd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and they should be able to find some second and third chance opportunities against a Northern Kentucky team that right now is allowing teams to be able to grab about 30.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, 233rd in all of college basketball. And for Northern Kentucky, while you've been able to get a lot of production out of their main man, Mr. LJ Wells, down low, and he's been able to play Wells, being able to give you about 8.2 rebounds, 12.5 points per contest. He's the one guy on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. Now you've got a trio of guys give you between 15.5 and 17.5 points per contest, and Donovan Ode, Dan Gresinger, Khalil Robinson, and Robinson has been able to shoot 46.5% from 3-point. As a whole, this team does shoot about 35.5% per 3. That's the top 130 mark in all of college basketball, but Northern Kentucky themselves is outside the top 175 in terms of their ball security. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and I do think that Detroit going to be able to grab some second chances, hold in there, and I do think that there's going to be quite a few dead possessions in a game where neither of these teams are necessarily playing at warp speed. It's not necessarily super slow. Northern Kentucky about 143rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Detroit is about 117th, but do think that in the end, Detroit is going to be able to hold in there. I'm going to take the 10 plus here with Detroit, set them as an 8.5-point dog, made by total 152.5, so also in on the under 803, 804 on the card. It is Elon. They're going to be on the road against Northeastern, and Northeastern does find themselves as a underdog here of 2.5 points. 160.5 to 161.5 is the total. Made a total of 162, so I like the over. It's an Elon team that's fast, but not necessarily harebrained fast. 135th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. game, and it's an Elon team that has been rough with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 260 in terms of points per possession allowed, but you've also got a Northeastern team that they're going to give you plenty of second chances. They are currently 289th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, and this is just a Northeastern team that they're a relatively mid-tempo team that's not playing defense. They're 99th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did make Elon, as a result, a favorite of 4 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Elon has one of the best mid-major scorers in all of college basketball. Chandler Cottrell, he's been able to give you about 21.5 points, shoots only about 32% from three-point range. You've got Randall Pettis along Kepler Klonzich shooting over 40% from three. They could buy for about 26 points per contest. Klonzich has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. It's an Elon team that is a good but not great three-point shooting team, as they're shooting about 35.5% from three. That's a top 100 mark in all of college basketball, but they really do a good job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances, and that becomes all the bigger against a bunch in Northeastern that is giving up a lot of second chances. Elon right now, in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound in a roadside shoot score venue, they're a top 10 team in all of college basketball, and for Northeastern, they've really been struggling on offense ever since L.A. Pratt went out of the fold. He was very early on during the season, giving the team a whole bunch of production. Now with him out, they've been looking to Xavier Abreu along with Yuri Fritz, who combined for about 22 points per contest to really headline things. Now it's a good three-point shooting team. Northeastern, top 100 team with their three-point shooting percentage, as you've got Ryan Williams, who's able to shoot 38.5% for three. William Kamori, 45.5% three-point shooter. He's supplying the team with about 11 points per contest. Xander O'Leary has been able to throw in there about 7.5 rebounds per game as well, but in this ordeal, I do think that for Northeastern, they are going to get a little bit flattened on defense. I do think that this could come down to a little bit of late game fouling as well. This is a Northeastern team that's struggled a little bit with their free throw shooting, and Elon, they're about 71.5% of the free throw line, but I do think that Elon and the overall firepower that they've got on offense gets the job done. Semi-line at 4, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Elon, and at a 161.5 or less, in on the over, 805, 806 on the card, it is Youngstown State, and they're going to be on the road against Wright State. Wright State, they hope to be the right side, as they're going to be finding themselves as 6.5 point favorites on this game, 141.5 to a 142.5, and with Wright State, I did set them as a underdog of 4.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take those points. You got a Wright State team that's really been able to iron out their defense. This team in past years has been just all sorts of brutal, and really both of these teams have had a propensity to be really bad defensive teams in the past, but they've made some coaching changes here over the last few seasons, and both of these teams have been able to straighten that out. For Wright State, they do find themselves a top 165 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Youngstown State, they're 169th. Both of these teams right on par with one another. For Youngstown State, they're not necessarily a team that's going to go into flamethrower mode from three-point range, but they do have Chris Carroll caroling all the way to being able to give you 17 points. He shoots about 45% from three. For a team that is old, they shoot about 35% from the outside. Of this team loves to bomb it from three. They're a top 35 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range, and they do face off against a Wright State team that they're going to give you some open opportunities from three-point range. It's a Wright State team that has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they sometimes gamble a little bit for turnovers, as at home they're allowing teams to shoot 37% from three-point range. That is outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. Youngstown State, they're actually allowing teams at a roadside shoot square venue to only shoot about 31% from three-point range. That is indeed a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. And for Wright State, you've only got really one guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, Michael Evabrow. He's been able to do a relatively solid job there. And then the freshman in Michael Cooper, he's been their main scorer, as he's been able to come in and give this team right around about 15.5 points, 3 assists per contest. From three-point range, he has been able to bomb it at about a 37% clip. Additionally, Solomon Caglin has been able to shoot 41.5% from three. And Wright State, all of a sudden, they become a top 75 team, shooting about 36.9% from three-point range. But for this Wright State team as well, they're going to give up a few second and third chances. Overall, they're a top 175 team in terms of their overall rebound percentage. And on the inside for this Youngstown State team, you might not have Gabe Dines from a season ago, but you still have a 7-footer that's able to give you some relatively good shot blocking, as you've been able to get a little bit over a block per contest out of their 7-footer, and Emmanuel Zugalov, who's been able to give you about 6.5 points per contest. And I think that that's just enough for them to be able to remain lively, along with Bryson Dawkins, Rich Rolfe, both giving you combined about 9.5 rebounds, 21 points per contest, as it is a bunch in Youngstown State that is in the top 150 in both their 2-point shooting percentage, offense and defense. So circumstance where I did set my line at a 4.5, I'm going to be willing to take 5+ here with Youngstown State, and with this total out of 141.5, I set mine at a 140.5. I'm in on the under, 807, 808 on the card. UW Green Bay is going to be on the road against Cleveland State. Cleveland State does find themselves as a home underdog of 2.5 to 3.5 points. 149.5 is the total, and I said Cleveland State is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. It is a UW Green Bay team that can't take advantage of the kryptonite of this Cleveland State team. Cleveland State is outside the top 300 in terms of both turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, and turnovers on a per possession basis that they actually commit themselves on offense, as UW Green Bay outside the top 355 in terms of their turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And one thing that this Cleveland State team has done a good job of is being able to go bombs away from three. They're 45th in the country in terms terms of their three-point shooting percentage. UW Green Bay outside the top 220 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And overall for Green Bay, they shoot 34.6% from three. That's a top 145 mark, but that goes down to 31.8% away from home. Now, this is a Cleveland State team that has been well outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage defense, but I do think that they're going to do a nice job with having Trey Beard along with Ice Emery being able to combine for about 26 points per contest. Emery shoots 37.5% for 3, 2 assists per contest. Trey Beard is able to give you about 3 assists. He throws in there 13 points per contest, and you've had Dan Nasay be able to give you about 6 rebounds per game down low. So they should be rock solid there against a UW Green Bay team that just frankly does not generate a lot of second and third chances for themselves. They're outside the top 350 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. They only grab about 7.5 offensive rebounds per game. They don't allow opponents to grab a lot of second and third chances, but they're also getting bludgeoned down low outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. UW Green Bay is well outside the top 275 with that regard. Cleveland State is as well, and Cleveland State is looking to play at warp speed. They're about 45th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Green Bay, the opposite, they're about 337th, but I think that you get a nice scoring expose here. I set my total at 157.5. I'm in on the over. Marcus Hall for this UW Green Bay team. It's been rock solid, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 34.5% from three. And then the ancillary guys, Caden Wilkins, Preston Rudinger, they both shoot over 40% from three-point range, combined about 18 points per game. So I like what these guys are able to bring to the table. And Justin Allen, he's been hot and cold, but he's been able to supply this team with about 13 points per contest as well. I do think, though, that for this Cleveland State team, even though they have been a team that's been getting a little bit line based on the glass as well, Green Bay not being able to generate those second and third chances, and Green Bay being as weak as they are down low and giving up some open looks from three-point range, that allows Cleveland State to get the job done. And in a little bit of a tight spot, this Green Bay team, they shoot about 72% at the free throw line. Cleveland State more around 73.5%. So this at a total of 157.5. I like the over, and Cleveland State here. All right, on the money line, 8-9, 8-10 on the card. It is the Citadel, and they're going to be on the road against UNC Greensboro. And Greensboro does find themselves as a pretty good size favorite here over 9.5 points. 147.5 to 148.5 is the total, and I made a total of a 143. I like the under now for the Citadel. They are well outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, they are also one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. It's currently they are clocking in about 339th in terms of total possessions per game, and Greensboro is traditionally a slow team. They've found themselves up to being mid-tempo, 183rd in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that Greensboro, even though it's been a rough year for them, they're currently outside the top 300 themselves in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They win this game from within. I did set Greensboro here as a favorite of 11 points. I'm going to be one late because I do think that they have the best player in this game. Justin Neely is able to give you about 16 points, 11.5 rebounds. He's actually shooting about 35% from three for a Greensboro team that they shoot about 36% from three-point range. They have been in the top 175 with that regard. I don't know how long-lasting that's going to be, and on the road that goes down to about 33.5% from the outside. But again, the Citadel's really not doing anything well on defense. They're not generating turnovers. They're not guarding the arc. They're not guarding the interior. And this is a Citadel team that they're not going to be able to give themselves any real second and third chances. This team is outside the top 220 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Now, I will say this for the Citadel. They're an awful shooting team, but they don't necessarily turn the ball over a ton. And you've got a Greensboro team that they themselves are not putting you under duress. The Citadel, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they do find themselves inside the top 250 with this regard. And for Greensboro, they've been okay in terms of taking care of the ball, about 150th with this regard. And for this Citadel team, you do have solo Ed Bossi, who's been able to do a relatively solid job, give you 5+ rebounds per game, but he's pretty much the lone guy on the roster that's been able to give you a double-figure amount of rebounds for the Citadel team. As a collective, they are outside the top 275 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage against D1 competition, against non-D1 teams, closer to about 225th, but Braxton Williams, Christian Moore, these two guys do give you about 23 points per contest. They both shoot about 36% from three. Pretty much the lone two guys out of their top 8 scorers that shoots above 33.3% from three-point range. You've had Connor Kingsbury be able to come in there, give you about 8.5 points per contest, but for the Citadel, things have just been going downward and downward with their offense. They are still well outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For the Citadel team, they're really giving it up on the inside, and that means that Neely and company for Greensboro, who really doesn't give themselves a lot of second and third chances as well. This is a Greensboro team that, in regards to their offensive rebound percentage, are well outside the top 225 with that regard. Gets it done, and for Greensboro, they do find themselves in the top 55 in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. So, to set this line at a 143, I'm in on the under, and with Greensboro, I'm willing to lay up to 10.5 with them, 8-11, 8-12 on the card. That is North Carolina A&T. They're going to be on the road against William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both, and well, you're laying a whole bunch of points with this tag team between 12.5 and 13 points. 160.5 is the total, and I set a total here of a 165.5. I do like the over, as you've got a William and Mary team that is just absolutely looking to gun it. In terms of total possessions per game, they're a top 20 team with this regard. Now, they're still a little bit sloppy with the ball. They're about 165th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but you've also got a North Carolina A&T team that they've got their issues with regards to ball security as well. They're 271st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and for this William & Mary team, they've really been able to hunker down with regards to their defense, as this is one of the best perimeter defenses they're going to find in all of college basketball. Right now, they are allowing teams to shoot just 28.7% from three-point range. That's a top 15 mark in all of college basketball. And A&T, right now, they are 323rd with this regard, and this is a William & Mary team that they've looked to take a bunch of shots from three. William & Mary, also a top 35 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but on the offensive side of things, for William & Mary, they take about 44.5% of their shots from three-point range. That's a top 85 mark in all of college basketball. Well, they do play at their crazy harebrained tempo, top 15 team in terms of total possessions per game. And for North Carolina A&T, what has really been ailing them is that their number 2 scorer in Luron Walker has been out for quite some time. Lewis Walker is still in there. He's been able to give the team 17.5 points per contest, rock solid, but Walker through 5 games was shooting 50% from 3, 16.5 points per contest. We have not seen him in darn near a month and a half. So Trent Middleton comes over from Delaware. He's been able to give you about 11 points, 3 assists per contest. He's needed to step up, but he's shooting less than 30% from three-point range. And for this North Carolina A&T team, they're really looking to pile drive the ball inside. They're a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the arc. They've been more of a top 250 team with their 2-point shooting percentage outside the top 3 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but they're just getting blitzed from the outside. And to the credit of this North Carolina A&T team, they've been able to give themselves some second and third chances, and this is a William & Mary team that does find themselves outside the top 250 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. For A&T, 88th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound away from them that goes into the top 65. But for William & Mary, I think that the whole is great, that the sum of its parts approach is going to be able to win out here, as you've got Tonde Vali Fasasi, who's been your top scorer with about 12 points, 4 boards per contest, and just have a lot of guys that are able to dole out the ball. First set for guys that give you at least 2.5 assists per game. Chase Lowe is able to get low with 9.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4 assists per contest. Reese Miller's out with injury, but should be good to go in this game. He's been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. Only shoots about 30% from three-point range, but you've had Joel Emmanuel be able to shoot 40% from 3. He's got some good versatility, and I do think that with William & Mary generating the turnovers that they do, and with the way that they're going to get open looks from 3, they do find a way to persevere, get the job done. And William & Mary, also a top 50 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. So made my total a 165.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 15 points here with William & Mary. 8-13, 8-14 on the card. St. Thomas is going to be on the road against North Dakota. North Dakota finds themselves as a home underdog here of 9.5 points. 154.5 is the total line. For St. Thomas, I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now for this North Dakota team, they do find themselves outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do one thing well, though. They're 29th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, you've got a St. Thomas team that's been really good in terms of taking care of the ball, and they are currently 70th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So they've been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of excelling on offense. But that said, they're not giving themselves any sort of second and third chances whatsoever. This team is currently finding themselves outside the top 360 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. And I do think that that's going to keep this North Dakota team relatively lively, as for North Dakota, they have had their struggles on the glass, so not having to worry about giving up those second and third chances is going to be pretty good for them. You've got Eli King, who's been all sorts of versatile. He's right now supplying the team with about 11.5 points, 5 boards, 2 assists per contest, and Grayson Ullman has been able to step up at the backcourt with about 12.5 points per game. North Dakota is outside the top 250 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but they've been okay in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. They keep things clean, top 125 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and this has been a St. Thomas team that has been solid in terms of generating turnovers. I'm not going to call it amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a team that ranks about 175th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, with much of that being a team that is going to be willing to gamble just a little bit for turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, St. Thomas does find themselves in the top 75 in all of college basketball, but for St. Thomas, they've uncharacteristically struggled from three-point range. In conference play, they've actually shot more like 36.5% from three-point range, with having Noah Minsale being able to give you 20.5 points, 4.5 assists. He only shoots about 27.5% from 3. Carter Bajerke has been your top 3-point shooter at about 39%, 9.5 points per contest. Isaiah Johnson Agriu has been able to give you about 11.5 points per game as well. And for St. Thomas, top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but in a dip and suck spot where you need free throws to be able to cover the spread, they shoot just 70.5% of the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue. They've been rock solid down low. They're a top 15 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that this is going to be a relatively moderate tempo game. I did set my total here at a 152.5, as I do think that both teams execute solidly on offense, but not necessarily amazingly. With the St. Thomas team, in terms of total possessions per game, right now you've got them checking in about 163rd in all of college basketball, but I do think that, unlike in a lot of games, North Dakota going to be able to generate those turnovers. They're a mid-tempo team as well, so in on the under and the points here with North Dakota. 8-15, 8-16 on the card. It is Arkansas State on the road against South Alabama, and South Alabama does find themselves as a home underdog here, as you're catching 3.5 points. 153.5 2.5 is the total line with South Alabama. Made them the 2.5 point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. For South Alabama, they take away what Arkansas State does really well. Arkansas State is a top 35 team with their free throw shooting percentage, as right now they've been able to shoot 77.7% at the free throw line, and with Arkansas State, they have just had issues with regards to perimeter offense. They are shooting less than 31% from three-point range outside the top 280. With that regard, 327th in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis. And you've got a South Alabama team that they dare you to shoot it from three-point range. 62.4% of opponents' field goal attempts come from three-point range. That is the highest mark in all of college basketball. And they're second in the country in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per-possession basis. And right now for Arkansas State, they just have not been able to find that main scorer. Now, you've got a ton of guys that have been able to give you in that neighborhood of, we're going to call it about 7.5 to 11.8 points per contest. As a matter of fact, right now you got 7 different guys with Joey Chamea, who has been able to give you 13 points per game, but he's only played in 7 games. Give you between, we're going to call it 7.4 and 13 points per contest. And Jalen Hampton down low has been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. Arkansas State, top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so they give themselves second and third chances, but just not really draining those outside looks. And this is a South Alabama team that has been pretty solid in terms of being able to generate turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, a top 135 team with that regard is South Alabama, not looking to push any sort of tempo whatsoever. In terms of total possessions per game, 299th in all of college basketball. You've got an Arkansas State team that's looking to gun it at 37th in the country with this regard. And for South Alabama, it's not like this is a team that's going to go bombs away from three. They've been able to with a few injuries of their own, but they do have a guy with some good versatility that I like in Adam Olson. At 6'8", he's been supplying about 16.5 points per contest, shoots about 39% from three-point. Jazz Harris, he's able to give you about 17 points per contest as well. It's a South Alabama team that really doesn't give themselves a lot of second and third chances, but they do a nice job being able to keep things relatively clean with their possessions. Now, in a tight spot, South Alabama, they only shoot about 68.5% of the free throw line, but they're a top 50 team in terms of taking care of the ball. They commit the fewest fouls on a per possession basis in all of college basketball as well. And with this Arkansas State team being very, very suspect with regards to taking care of the ball, and the South Alabama team just forcing teams to force it up from three-point range, I think that keeps it a little bit low scoring, and I think that South Alabama gets the job done. I like South Alabama here on the money line. Set them as a 2.5 point favorite, made by a total of 146.5, so I like the under. 817, 818 on the card. It is Cal Baptist, and they're going to be on the road against Abilene Christian, and Abilene Christian does find themselves as a favorite of 1.5 points. 137.5 is the total line with Abilene Christian. I made them the underdog of 4.5 points. I do like Cal Baptist here. You've got an Abilene Christian team that's currently outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've got a pair of teams that are really not looking to push a lot of tempo right now. Cal Baptist, they're about 237th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and with this Abilene Christian team, they are currently checking at about 243rd. And for Abilene Christian, amazing team in terms of generating turnovers. They're 11th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they gamble for turnovers in which they're outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, mainly because they're not rock solid down low. They're outside the top 280 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. At Cal Baptist, they're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their shots in a road/neutral court venue that come from 2-point range. You do have Braden Hubbard for this Abilene Christian team, give you about 16.5 points, 5 boards. He's been able to do a nice job there, and he does shoot about 34.5% per three. Abilene Christian as a whole, they shoot about 33.5% per three, and they get just bludgeoned from 3-point range. A lot of teams to shoot over 36% from three, but they're a top 25 team in terms of forcing things to the inside. But again, they're not necessarily doing a great job there. There's not going to be a lot of second and third chances in this game either. As for Abilene Christian, top 95 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, Cal Baptist is a top 25 team, and this Cal Baptist team is just not a good 3-point shooting team, despite having a 20-point per game score in Dominique Daniels, who's been able to give you about 20.5 points. He throws in there about 4 boards, 3.5 assists per game, but Thomas Endong along with Brady Henjai, these guys combine for about 11 points per game, but he combined for more like 13 rebounds per game. Martell Williams, how he does it. He shoots about 34% from three, supplies you with about 14 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Jonathan Grimmin has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. As well in Cal Baptist, they do commit quite a few turnovers outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slog of the game. But that said, with this Cal Baptist team, the way that they've got so much size down low and the way that Abilene Christian does not execute on offense, do you think that Cal Baptist finds a way to persevere, get the job done? I did set this Cal Baptist team as a 4.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line and on the under semi-total at a 132.5. 819, 820 on the card. It is Charleston. They are going to be on the road against Towson, and Towson does find themselves as a favorite here. You're going to be laying between 2 to 2.5 points with them. 141.5 is the total. Semi-total 135.5. I like the under. Now, this Charleston team, I believe that they're better than what their metrics have indicated this far this season because they were dealing with injuries to Kobe Duggan along with really Mr. Dean, who's still currently out of the fold. You're you're not going to have Mr. Dean available. But that said, you got back in the fold Connor Hickman, who he was really good over at Bradley a few seasons ago. And for Hickman, he's been able to come in and give you about 12 points per contest. Kobe Duggan in 4 games, he gives you 14 points per game. But this team as a whole still shoots less than 30% from 3. They're outside the top 3 with that regard. Towson's even worse. Towson is one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They are outside the top 355 in terms of total possessions per game, currently 360th in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. That said, this is a Towson team that has been a top 45 team with regards to overall rebound percentage. They do a great job being able to give themselves plenty of second and third chances. Tyler Teata, Dylan Williamson, these 2 guys have been able to give you about 31.5 points per contest. Jack Dombia down low has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. And for the Towson group, they do a relatively solid job guarding the 3-point line. They allow teams to only shoot about 30.5% per 3. That's the top 75 mark in all of college basketball. They take it on the chin a little bit down low, and neither of these teams are really going to be generating a lot of turnovers. For Towson, they do find themselves outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Charleston as well outside the top 300, but neither team looking to push bases. Charleston, they're also still outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, and you do have Christian Reeves down low for Charleston, who's been able to give you 8.6 half rebounds per game. Joel Maychot has been able to give you about 2.5 blocks per contest. He throws in their 10 points, 6 rebounds per game as well, but I do believe that Towson, who's had a relatively rough start to the season, they're going to be able to find it a little bit more defensively. I do think that they're going to be able to slow this game down, and a Charleston team that is getting back a lot of pieces, but they haven't necessarily been able to play out there on the floor at the same time against a team with a lot of size down low and just looks to ugly up games. Well, I think that things get uglied up. I set my line at 3.5. I'm willing to lay up to 3 or Towson. I'm in on the under as well, so I total 135.5. 821, 822 on the card. It is South Dakota. They play us to Kansas City. UMKC does find themselves as a underdog here of 7.5 points. 159.5 is a total. I actually set a total of 164. I like the over. I don't know why, but Kansas City has really sped themselves up in terms of their tempo this year. Typically a team that's outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, up to 105th in terms of total possessions per game. And South Dakota, they're playing at warp speed. They're 27th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And right now, with this UMKC bunch, they just don't really generate a lot of turnovers in a roadside-score venue. They're outside the top 175 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And unlike last season, where South Dakota did a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, they've been outside the top 225 in terms of ball security this season. But also for South Dakota, they've been able to do a better job in terms of giving themselves some second and third chances on the glass, because they do get back the 7-footer that got injured last season in Cameron Fens. He's been supplying about 12 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. And then you've got Isaac Bruns, has been able to shoot 37.5% from 3, 28 points per contest. Overall for the season, South Dakota shoots about 35% from 3-point range. In conference play, that's gone up to 42% from 3. I think that you get a little bit of regression there. But that said, for South Dakota, you've also been able to get some good production out of Jordan Crawford along with Isaiah Butin, who've been able to combine for about 22.5 points per contest. And Butin is shooting 40% from 3-point range. South Dakota, not great down low. They are outside the top 350 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, despite the fact that they've been able to pull in their second and third chances. But right now for the UMKC team, they're really doing nothing right on offense or on defense. UMKC is right now outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, bottom 15 team with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but they're also 329th with regards to the points allowed on a per possession basis, as typically this team is really able to own the paint. They do a great job down low, and this year, much less of that. You only have 2 different guys. That'd be Jerome Palm along with Chris Dockery, who give you over 4.2 rebounds per game, and they do combine for about 13.8 rebounds per game. Palm has been able to give you 9.5 points per contest, and then you've got Camelo Branch, who's been able to give you 14 points. She's 37.5% from 3-point. Jason Petty has been able to shoot about 34.5% from the outside, but this UMKC team is still outside the top 225 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 300 in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. I think that goes northward against a South Dakota team that just gets absolutely lambasted down low, and this UMKC team looks to pile drive the ball down low, but with this UMKC team just giving up as much as they do on the defensive glass, outside the top 280 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, I think that South Dakota gets those second chances to get the job done and put points up on the board. So I might total 164. I like the over, and with South Dakota, we'll lay up to 7.5 with them. 823, 824 on the card. Eastern Illinois on the road against Little Rock. Little Rock does find themselves as a very slim favorite here. You're going to be laying with them 4.5 to 5.5 points. Starting to see a 6 out there as well. So on this game, 133.5. Like the fact that this line is moving, as I did set mine at 2.5, so we'll take the points with Eastern Illinois. Now, if you look at the raw metrics for Eastern Illinois, bunch that has been relatively rough both on the offensive and defensive side of things. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, hovering in that neighborhood about 300th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But much of the season they were without Andre Washington, who comes over from Long Island, and he's been a big boost for the team, giving you 13 points per contest. Not an amazing 3-point shooter, but about 35.5% from 3-point range for a team as a whole that is shooting only about 30.5% from 3. That ranks outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. And you got a Little Rock team that last year was really good on the defensive side of things, 298th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, very much playing at a slow and controlled tempo, about 276th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Eastern Illinois right there with them, 272nd second, and for Little Rock, just the sloppiness has gotten to this team. Outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, they are going to have probably the best player in this game in Jonathan Lawson. He's been able to give you about 16.5 points per contest, shoots 36% for three, and Kachi Nezai has been able to give you about 11 points. He shoots 44% from three-point range as well, but outside their main starting five, it's been really rough for this team that has been a top 125 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, but after last year, they were so good on the glass. They're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. You could use a little bit more out of Cooper Jacoby. He's been, for Eastern Illinois, a guy that's only been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. We've seen a little bit of a fall off there, but also if you're in a tight spot for Little Rock, you want to note this if you're willing to lay the number. Little Rock, 64.3% at the free throw line. That is outside the top 340 in all of college basketball. Not like this is an Eastern Illinois team that's absolutely amazing with their shooting as well, but for Eastern Illinois, they're shooting more around about 74% at the free throw line. For Eastern Illinois, they don't give themselves a lot of second, third chances outside the top 270 in terms of offensive rebound percentage outside the top 200 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. So even though this Little Rock team is very sloppy with regards to their defense, I do think that it's going to be a little bit more of a controlled game, but it's on my total 133.5, 134. I do think that late game following can get you just enough for the over, so in on the over, and with Eastern Illinois, made them a 2.5 point dog. I'm going to be willing to take those points. 825, 826 on the card. Morehead State, they're on the road against Tennessee State. Tennessee State, 8.5 to 9 point favorite. So in this game, it is 147.5, and for Morehead State, made them a underdog of 8.5 points. So at a 7.5 to an 8, I'm willing to lay with Tennessee State. Tennessee State has been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Now, they themselves outside the top 275 in terms of their own ball security, and for Tennessee State, they do check in about 151st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Strangely giving up more points per possession when they're at home rather than away from home, but Morehead State has always been a team that has been built on really good rebounding, being able to be solid defensively, but leave something to be desired offensively. Right now, they are about 295th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and unlike in past years, this is just not a team that's doing a very good job on the glass. Right now, for Morehead State, 333rd in all of college basketball in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, and you do have a Tennessee State team that has been a top 125 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. Now, Tennessee State is not a team that's going to go into flamethrower mode from three-point range right now. They're shooting only about 30.5% for three. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. That's why they look to pile drive the ball down low. This team is a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from two-point range. Now, your top scorer, Travis Harper, is 17.5 points. Shoots 40% for three. He's been rock solid. Pretty much a lone guy in the roster that shoots above 30% for three, but someone like Dante Harris is able to give you 11.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. You've got Aaron Nabakura, who's been able to give you over 3 steals per game as well. So these guys have been a solid team in terms of being able to just generate those turnovers. And for Morehead State, typically they find themselves outside the top 275 or so in terms of total possessions per game, and they've sped themselves up quite a bit this year. For Morehead State, they find themselves about 206th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Tennessee State, they're looking to play quite up tempo. They're about 49th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. But for Morehead State, you just don't really have a ton in terms of that one guy that's able to really own things down low. You've got John Carroll caroling all the way to about 10.7 rebounds per game. One guy that gives you over 4.3 rebounds per game. Davion Cunningham, George Marshall in the backcourt, they combine for about 24.5 points per game. They've been able to combine for about 4 assists per contest as well. But with this team being as sloppy as they are with the ball, no longer being a great team in terms of rebounding. Now, still a top 175 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but I do think that Tennessee State going to be able to own this game, and Tennessee State have to be a little bit suspect with regards to the fact that this is not necessarily the most trustworthy team in terms of taking care of the ball themselves, but do shoot about 74% of the free throw line, made my line an 8.5, so willing to lay up to 8 with them, and with this total semi-9 to 148.5 with the way that Tennessee State playing up tempo. So in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8 here with Tennessee State. 827, 828, Southern Indiana, they're on the road against Tennessee Tech. Tennessee Tech is a 6.5 point favorite, 141.5 to 142.5 is the total. I mean, Tennessee Tech, the favorite of 5.5 points. So 6+, going to be willing to take it with Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana really had a tough time to begin the season in terms of taking care of the ball and their ball security, but they've been doing a much better job here recently. Now they're still getting plowed on the glass, 299th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So second and third chances are going to be there for Tennessee Tech, but not like the Tennessee Tech team is necessarily an amazing team in terms of generating for themselves. Second and third chances, they do have Makai Cameron, Danny Pounds in the backcourt, who will be able to combine for about 23.5 points per game, and Pounds is pounding it out with about 50% three-point shooting, so credit to him, but it's on very, very low volume. Tennessee Tech currently outside the top 280 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Actually an okay team with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, but they're getting blitzed from the outside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, which isn't the worst thing in this ordeal because Southern Indiana is just a team that does not shoot. They are currently outside the top 285 in terms of three-point, two-point, and free throw shooting percentage, and 64.4% at the free throw line. That said, they've been able to do a much better job in terms of forcing teams inside. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from inside the three-point line, and they're in a top top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with Ishmael El Habib leading things in the backcourt, 16.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Yeah, she shoots 33% from 3. Same with Cardell Bailey, who chips in there 14 points per game. Really the lone guys on the roster that aren't dealing with injuries that shoot above 33.5% from 3-point range. And then you've got Trey Thomas, still due to injury. That's been very much hampering the team. Shady and Sharp, I expected more than like 4.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest out of him. And it is a Southern Indiana team that was playing very up-tempo to begin the season. They've tapered it back a little bit. They're about 97th in the country now in terms of total possessions per game. And for this Tennessee Tech team, they're a team that's looking to push a little bit of tempo as well. They're about 159th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But you do have two teams that are looking to be able to slow it down a little bit more now that we've gotten here to conference play. I did set my total at a 145.5 because I do think that Southern Indiana holds in there in terms of late game fouling. Neither of these teams generating a lot of turnovers, so good clean possessions to be had, like the over, and I'm willing to take 6+ here with Southern Indiana. 829, 830 on the card. Southern Utah is playing OC Tarleton State. Tarleton State, a 6.5 point favorite total on this game, 151.5. I set Tarleton State as a double figure favorite here. I'm going to be willing to lay it. I set them as an 11.5 point favorite, with Tarleton State numero uno in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. At Southern Utah, 315th in terms of turnovers per possession, and out of 365 Division I teams, guess where Southern Utah is with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage defense. If you guess 365th, you are correct, and they're not even doing a good job on the glass. For Southern Utah, 298th in all of college basketball in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and then you've got Dior Johnson for the Tarleton State team that has been really one of the best six men we've seen in college basketball in quite some time. He comes in off the bench, he gives you over 23.5 points per contest, has been able to shoot a lightning 56% from 3-point. You should see that fall off a little bit, but he generates a little bit over a steal per contest. Now, Tarleton State, not necessarily the world's greatest team on the glass, but they've gotten much better. They're now within the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage. They themselves, Tarleton State, gets sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 3 in terms of their ball security, but they've been able to do an okay job being a country average team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. And Southern Utah is looking to push teams inside in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from 3-point range, top 50 team in all of college basketball there, but even on the inside, they're outside the top 2 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Jaden Ferroa, Elijah Duvall combined for about 25 points per game. Ferroa shoots 37.5% from 3. Comes in from Holy Cross, pair of blocks, 6 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a relatively solid job there. And Isaiah Cottrell, the transfer from West Virginia and UNLV, has been able to give you about a block, 8 rebounds per game. But that said, this is a Southern Utah team that's outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're just really not getting anything generated whatsoever. And I think that Tarleton State does a good job with their more up-tempo style this year. This Tarleton State team has really sped themselves up in terms of total possessions per game. They're about 61st in all of college basketball. You've got a Southern Utah team that's able to crank up that tempo a little bit as well in terms of total possessions per game, 118th. I think the Tarleton State takes it to a bad Southern Utah defense, and they're able to generate those turnovers. Set my total 153.5 at a 153 or less in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay that number with Tarleton State. 831, 832 on the card. It's SIU Edwardsville. They're on the road against UT Martin, and UT Martin does find themselves as a pretty good-sized favorite here. You're going to be laying with them 8.5 points on this game, 129.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points here because with UT Martin, I could only set them as a 3 to 3.5 point favorite, mainly because they're just so sloppy with the ball. Outside the top 345 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and you've got two teams that are very equal teams with regards to their defense. With this UT Martin team, they're about 63rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this Edwardsville team, they're clocking in at 68th, and if you look at them in a roadside shoot court environment, they're actually a top 30 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, not allowing anything easy, as they are a top 30 team in a roadside shoot court venue in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and this is a UT Martin team that shot just 26.5% from 3-point range at home. That is outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. Now, for Tennessee Martin, they're doing a great job with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage defense as well. They've been a top 30 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage this season, so they've been able to do a rock-solid job holding up there, but that said, this is a bunch that has been very banged up as well, so you have a little bit of a lack of chemistry because you've been without Dragic Lagu for quite a while. Andrema Brankovic has been able to give you about 15.5 points, 8.5 rebounds. You have Mateus Denises, who's been able to throw in there 13.5 points per contest, but also in a tight spot for UT Martin. They only shoot about 68.5%. The free throw line hovering right around about 3 yards in all of college basketball. Now, they have been a pretty solid shot blocking team. They do find themselves in the top 60 in terms of block shots on a per possession basis, but on this SIU Edwardsville team, even though the backcourt has been a little bit janky, you've got Ring Malaith, who's able to give you 17 points, 5.5 boards. He's been shooting about 33% from 3-point range, and then Joe Valeri, Missouri shoots 48.5% from three for a team that's about country average, shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. They're struggling inside. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but they do a great job with their perimeter offense, perimeter defense, and I do think that with this bunch being able to generate the turnovers that they do, this Edwardsville team, top 125 team, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, that's going to be able to keep them lively, and do you think that you're going to be close enough for late game felling, as you don't have these teams really pushing a ton of tempo, but they're not necessarily the slowest teams in the country. Edwardsville 259th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, UT Martin 280th, so set a total of 131.5, like the over, and with UT Martin, go ahead and make them 3.5 point favorite, take those points with Edwardsville. 833, 834, Wichita State is on the road against Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic is a favorite of 4.5 to 5.5 points. So on this game, it is 152.5, seeing inside is 154.5 as well, and I'm going to be in on the under. It's by total 145.5. You've got a Wichita State team that's really looking to play a little bit more slow and controlled. They're about 275th in the country in terms of total possessions game. With Florida Atlantic, they've been pumping up their tempo a little bit more. They're about 91st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for Florida Atlantic, as per usual, they're not doing a great job in terms of guarding the three-point arc ever since we have seen the changeover at coach. They have had a little bit of a tough time there under coach Mr. John Jacobs, but that said, for this Florida Atlantic team, they've been able to do a very solid job on the glass. They are a top 20 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Wichita State is 67, so not a lot of second and third chances to be had, despite Florida Atlantic being a top 75 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. Wichita State top 25 themselves, and for Wichita State, it's been all about Kenyon Giles in the backcourt, as he's been able to do a nice job shooting 40+% from three-point range. He's able to supply the team with 15+ points per contest. You don't necessarily have a ton of pop in the backcourt outside of him. You've been able to have Mike Ray be able to come alive a little bit more recently, 9.5 points. He's been able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range, and then the 6'5" do-it-all guy in Karan Boyd, who comes over from East Tennessee, 6.5 boards, about 11 points per game. He's been rock solid, and Devin Vanderpool on the flip side for Florida Atlantic, mid-30s point shooter, 15+ points per contest. He's going to be able to make some nice contributions in this game, but the difference maker is the Berg, Will Berg. He comes over from Purdue, 8.5 points, 7.8 boards, block and a half per contest, and then Emmanuel Okafor is able to give you a block per contest as well. So Florida Atlantic not going to be able to find a whole lot easy down low, and Cannon Carlisle is the sort of guy that can shoot you into a game, and boy, oh boy, can he shoot you out of a game. 15 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and he's shooting right around about 31% from three-point range overall. And then you do have the nice shot blocker, Devin Williams, who's been able to give you 3 blocks per game. I do think that for Florida Atlantic, even though they've been outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're going to be able to do a relatively okay job in this ordeal. And you've got a Wichita State team that has been a top 65 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do a solid job down low, and I do think that this game gets slowed down, and Wichita State going to be able to hold in there. Semi line at 1.5, so we'll take the 4.5 to 5.5 here with Wichita State, made by total 145.5. I'm also in on the under. 835, 836 on the card. Lindenwood is going to be on the road against Southeast Missouri State, and SEMO finds themselves as a pretty mid-sized favorite here, 6.5 to 7 points, 155 to 156 is the total, seeing a 154.5 as well. I did some mine at a 156.5, so I do like the over. You've got a pair of teams that are really not turning down for anything whatsoever. With the Southeast Missouri State team, they find themselves in the top 65 in terms of total possessions per game. Lindenwood is 40th, and Lindenwood now about a country average team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, so they're not doing a bad job defensively. Top 120 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With Southeast Missouri State, they are 220th, and second and third chances are going to be very hard to come by in this game, as it's a SEMO team that has their deficiencies. But for Southeast Missouri State, in terms of defensive rebound percentage, they are 62nd in the country, and at home, teams are grabbing 16.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 5 mark in all of college basketball, but this is not a Lindenwood team that really relies upon second and third chances to be able to get their scoring. You've got Aeneas Vettrell along Jadis Jones, who have been able to combine for about 32 points per contest. Now with Vettrell, he's shooting 36% from 3. Lindenwood as a whole, they're so rough with their 3-point shooting outside the top 275, shooting 30.7% from 3 and the 67% free throw shooting. That's a little bit of an issue. That said, this has been a Lindenwood team that's been pretty good in terms of being able to drive the ball inside. Top 40 team with regards to percentage of the shots that come from 2-point range. Top 150 team with regards to that 2-point shooting percentage. And for the Southeast Missouri State team, it's been just a little bit, shall we say, disjointed with regards to the backcourt. You got Braxton Secker, who's able to give you 14 points from 3-point range. He's shooting about 33% from 3, but this team shoots less than 30% from 3-point range, or about a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball, about 12 turnovers per contest. But this has also been a unit that has been getting a little bit more land basic with their shooting percentages, and they'll put you on the free throw line. They're a top 25 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Now, it's a Lindenwood team that are currently shooting about 67% free throw line outside the top 20 with that regard, but having someone like a Clayton Jackson give you 9 points, shooting 80% of the free throw line, he's going to be able to come up big in this game. And I do think that for Lindenwood, they're going to be able to hold in this game against the Southeast Missouri State team that in a nip and tuck spot, it's really hard to be able to trust in them shooting 68.2% at the free throw line. Made my total 156.5 at a 156 or less. I do like the overhand with Lindenwood. I'm going to be willing to take 5+ points with them. 837, 838 on the card. It is the battle for Idaho. Idaho State plays us to Idaho. Idaho does find themselves as a 3.5 point underdog. It's all this game 149.5 to 115.5, and with Idaho State made them a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. With Idaho State, this has been one of the most efficient offenses at home in all of college basketball. Top 55 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis when specifically at home, and for Idaho State, they've taken a little bit of setback with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. They're outside the top 260 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and the one thing that this Idaho State team does, they do not allow you to get second and third chances. They are allowing opponents in a roadside shooting court venue to grab 23.8% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball, but this is still an Idaho team that they leave themselves very susceptible to outside shooting. Right now for Idaho, they're allowing teams to shoot from three-point range more in that neighborhood of about 35.1% from three-point range. Actually goes down to closer to about 34.5% when they're in a roadside shooting court venue. And for Idaho State, at home, they're allowing teams to shoot just 28% from three-point range. And I do think that that's going to be able to win out in this spot. You've got an Idaho State team that has been playing pretty slow and controlled outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Idaho's typically a team that doesn't push a lot of tempo either. They're more mid-tempo this season, 189th in the country. And for Idaho State, it's been all about Connor Hollenbeck along Caleb Vandergreen being able to combine for about 27 points per contest between the two of them. You get 12 boards, and both of these guys shooting over 39% per three. And then Jameson Guerra has been able to shoot 45% from three-point range, about 10.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest. Team does a relatively solid job taking care of the ball, but they themselves are outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And this is an Idaho defense that is really not going to be pressing the issue in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They find themselves outside the top 250 as well, but this is an Idaho team that they themselves top 35 team with their three-point shooting percentage over 37%. You've had Colton Mitchell really do a nice job stepping up. He shoots 38.5% from three-point. She and Jackson Rasmussen have been able to give you a combined 29 points per contest as Rasmussen, nice little bit of combo player, 4.5 boards, shoots 35% from three-point range. Biko Johnson has been able to give you 12.5 points per game as well. Idaho is one of the more efficient offenses in all of college basketball, top 85 team with that regard. They don't turn the ball over a ton, but again, they do get a little bit land-based from the outside with this Idaho State team. They just have a really good home court advantage. I do think that Idaho State is going to be able to find a way to be able to get the job done in a tight spot. They shoot about 73.5% of the free throw line, so set my line at 5.5. I'm willing to lay with Idaho State. Did set a total here of a 147.5 here at 150 plus. I just don't think you get enough possessions for the over, so like the under, and I'm willing to lay with Idaho State. 839, 840 on the card. UT Arlington is going to be on the road against Utah Tech. Utah Tech, a 1.5 point favorite total on this game, 139.5 to 140.5. And with Utah Tech, set them as a underdog of 2.5 points. I do like Arlington on the money line. Now for UT Arlington, the kryptonite of this team is turnovers outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. And right now for UT Arlington, they allow teams to shoot 26.3% from three. That is number 2 in all of college basketball. I think that there's going to be a little bit of negative regression there, but I don't know if that negative regression is going to be coming in this game, as Utah Tech has traditionally been a pretty good three-point shooting team. They've turned over a little bit of a new leaf this year as they bring in one Mr. Ethan Potter, who's over at Utah Valley. He's been able to do a nice job, give this team about 7 boards, 14.5 to 15 points per game, and that's been at the sacrifice of their three-point shooting, as right now they're about 250, shooting 32.1% from three. Now, that does go up to about 35.5% in a roadside shooting court venue, and you do have a guy that comes in from the SEC that's been able to give you about 9 to 10 points per contest, shoots relatively well from three-point range, and Deshaun Holt, who throws in there 3.5 rebounds per game as well. But for this Utah Tech team, even though they're better on the inside, they have gotten into the top 85 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. They're still a team that doesn't give themselves a lot of second and third chances. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, and this is a UT Arlington team that they do a nice job working their way to be able to get second and third chances out. They themselves only shoot about 32% from three-point range, so they're outside the top 250 with that regard, and combined with the sloppiness with regards to backcourt, that is a little bit of an issue, but do have an Arlington team that has also been able to grab about 32% of their misses as an offensive rebound, with Rayshawn Semester, lone holdover from last season, headlining things, 13.5 points, 6.5 boards, pair of assists per contest. And Marcel McCrary, who comes over from Northern Colorado, 14.5 points. He's been able to shoot 40% from three to really spearhead this effort. It is a Arlington team that's also a top 125 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They've been a top 50 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Even though this Arlington team is a little bit sloppy with the ball, they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of generating turnovers as well. If you look at turnovers forced on a per possession basis, right now this Arlington team is clocking in the top 75 away from them, and I do think that that's going to be able to allow them to be able to get the job done in this ordeal. I did set my total at a 138.5. Do think that the turnovers cost you an over, so in on the under and Arlington on the money line. 841, 842 on the card. Cal State Fullerton, they're on the road against UC Davis, and UC Davis a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite. Total on this game is 168.5. With Fullerton, they're gunning it. They're a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game. UC Davis is not as shy to run as in past years as well, but did have to semi-total here at a 164.5. I'm going to be in on the under. You had a Davis team that's more around about 114th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and UC Davis, very rock solid team in terms of generating turnovers, a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in their home games. And for UC Davis, last few seasons, they've been able to have that headline scorer like an Elijah Pepper. Last year, it was Ty Johnson. This year, it's a little bit more of a collective. Connor Sevilla, Niles Cooper, they combine for 29 points per game. And for Sevilla, he shoots 45% from three-point. You've got a pair of other guys who shoot over 40% from three in Isaiah Chappell and Carl Daughtry. These two guys both give you between 10.2 and 10.5 points per contest. Now, it's a UC Davis team that they allow a lot of second and third chances, and they themselves are well outside the top 275 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. But Niko Rokac, down low, 9.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And then you got Braden Fajemi, who comes over from Central Arkansas, give you about 2 steals per contest, so nice active hands there. And for Fullerton, last year, they were just absolutely atrocious at being able to take care of the ball. They've been much better this year with that regard, but this is just flat out a team that doesn't shoot it very well. For Fullerton right now, they are outside the top 175 with regards to their three-point shooting percent. They've been able to get a little bit more out of Landon Seaman, who's been able to shoot 43.5% for 13.5 points per game. Josh Ward, he throws in there about 14 points per contest, and it's sort of a make it and take it sort of team with Cal State Fullerton. They have found themselves in the top 125 now in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, but in terms of percentage of their missed shots to become an offensive rebound, they are 341st in all of college basketball. They are not going to grab for themselves a second chance. UC Davis are right there. They're about 334th in all of college basketball. And when you take a look at the defense of this Fullerton team, they're really giving it up from the outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Again, they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances, and this has been a Fullerton team that all of a sudden they've been able to do a good job in terms of generating turnovers as well. If you look at turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this is a unit that does find themselves clocking in the top 75 in all of college basketball. And with Fullerton, they're going to do a nice job with regards to turnover battle. That's going to be big, but in the end, I do think that UC Davis finds a way to be able to pull this one out on their home floor, set them as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay that number, and maybe my total 164.5 with the turnovers. I'm going to be in on the under. 843, 844 on the card. It's Eastern Washington. They're on the road against Weber State, and Weber State is a favorite here, mid-tier of 4.5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game, 158.5 to 159.5, and with Weber State, I did set them as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Weber State team that sometimes has a few issues in terms of taking care of the ball. They're about 130th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Eastern Washington, they've got themselves a whole bunch of issues. They're outside the top 275 in terms of ball security away from them, and this is just a team that's getting absolutely lambasted on defense. Eastern Washington is 342nd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and if you boil it down to a roadside shoot score venue, they're outside the top 345 with that regard, with one of the main cruxes of this team being awful at guarding the three-point arc. 352nd in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. That goes up to 40.6% in a road or neutral court environment. And for this Weber State team, they've been a good three-point shooting team at home. They shoot at home about 38.5% from three-point range. Now, for Weber State, you've been having a few guys deal with injuries, but now you've been able to get quite a bit down low out of a guy in Nigel Burris, who began his career over at Idaho. He's been able to give you about 8 to 9 points per contest. He's able to shoot in the high 30s from three-point range, and additionally, he's been able to pull in there about 5 or so rebounds per game. For Weber State, they're doing a nice job not allowing a lot of second and third chances to help on our team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. And then you've got Vajami Vartinen, who was dealing with an injury for about 6 or so games. He's back. He shoots 39.5% from three, 12.5 points per contest. Jace Whiting is able to give you 12.5 points per game as well. And then Eastern Washington, they're feeling like Moses because they've got Isaiah Moses, who's been doing a nice job in terms of being the leader of this offense. Comes over from UC Riverside with 17.5 points, 4 assists from three-point range. He's been able to bomb it at about a 37% clip. And then Alton Hamilton, he shoots 43% from three-point range, 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. But for Eastern Washington, you've got just 3 guys on the roster that give you over 3 rebounds per game, so they have been getting completely lambasted there. They're not doing the world's worst job in terms of allowing second and third chances, but they're not reeling them in themselves, and they've also been outside the top 345 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Johnny Radford, he's been able to give you about 7 points per contest, so do like what he's able to bring to the table as well. But for the Eastern Washington team, I think that they're going to be doomed by their just absolutely bad defense. I think that that's a very fair way of putting it, and to have a Weber State team that's looking to push a bit of tempo. They're about 65th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Eastern Washington, they're more around 106th in a roadside shoot score venue. That goes into the top 100. So do you think that you're going to get plenty of points up on the board in this game? Semi-total 164.5. So I like the over. And with Weber State, I'm willing to lay up to 8 with them. 8:45, 8:46 on the card. UC Santa Barbara. They're going to be on the road against Cal State Bakersfield. Meet the Roadrunners. Find themselves as a home underdog of 5.5 to 6.5 points. 148.5 is the total. And with Santa Barbara, could I set them as a 7.5 point favorite? So here with this, I'm going to be willing to lay it. It's starting to get close to that number because it's opened up more around about a 5, but I'm still going to be willing to lay with Santa Barbara, mainly because they are not going to allow the Roadrunners to be able to get second and third chances. The Santa Barbara team has been awful on defense, by the way. Like UC Santa Barbara used to be a really good defensive team. I don't know what has happened, but they're now 266th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That actually goes into the top 225 when they're in a road/neutral court environment. But one thing that you know with the Santa Barbara team, they're not going to allow second and third chances. Teams are grabbing just 20.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound away from home. And for Bakersfield, they're a top 35 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range, and they're outside the top 300 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. So that should allow the Santa Barbara team, who they shoot 76% of the free throw line, to be able to cover this number. You've got Ada Mahaney, who's been a rock-solid scorer, about 15 points per contest, shoots 40% for 3. Mario Little still dealing with a little bit of an injury, but you've been able to get some good production down low out of Mr. Zion Sensley. 7.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. Colin Smith comes over from Vanderbilt, 10.5 points per game. And for the Santa Barbara team, if you find yourself in a tight spot, each of their top 4 scorers do shoot above 79% at the free throw line. And then on the flip side, you got a Bakersfield team that they've been able to have some nice headline guys, and they do have a nice shot blocker down low in Ron Chesney. Comes over from Tennessee State, about 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, pair of blocks per contest, and then Dale Smith, 15 points per game. But I mean, this team is outside the top 300, both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They can find a way to get to the free throw line. They're a top 100 team with that regard, but even on defense, this team is getting dump trucked as well. They're outside the top 275 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. This despite the fact that you've been able to get Pierre Gonzette Jr., who comes over from Fresno State to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Well, he throws in there about 2.5 points per game as well. But I mean, with this team having CJ Hardy give you about 35.5% per 3, Jaden Alexander give you 38.5% per 3, you'd think they'd be a little bit better from the outside, but outside of town mark, nobody else really shoots above 31% from 3-point range. And with this Bakersfield team outside the top 300 in terms of ball security, and them for some reason really cranking up their tempo. For Bakersfield, 78th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Santa Barbara team that right now, they're about 241st. I think that Santa Barbara finds a way to get the job done. Semi-line at 7.5. I'm willing to lay it with the Gauchos, and like the over with the amount of possessions that you get, did semi-total at 153.5. 8:47, 8:48 on the card. It's Hawaii on the road against Cal Poly. Cal Poly is a home underdog of 6.5 to 7 points. 152.5 to 153.5 is the total. I did set a total here over 156. I like the over now with this Hawaii team. They have been an absolutely incredible defense. How about number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis? Number 1 away from home. Typically, Hawaii would be really rough away from the island. They've been much better this season, and for this Hawaii team, it's been one that has been cranking up their tempo a little bit more. They're about 108th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cal Poly, number 5, and I just think you get enough possessions here for the over. So looking there, I did set my total at a 156, and you do have a Cal Poly team that's not getting completely blown away on the glass. They're a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage. Now, one thing that they really need to clean up is the turnovers. For Cal Poly, they're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but have a Hawaii team that, while they do so many great things on defense, they're outside the top 200 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis. Now for Hawaii, Isaac Johnson, true 7-footer, 13 points, 90% free throw shooter, shoots in the mid-30s from 3, great versatility, and then Harry Ruyadev has been able to give you about 38.5% 3-point shooting, 12 points, 5 rebounds per game. Matter of fact, for Hawaii, each of your top 4 scorers give you at least 5.2 rebounds per game, so they've been really rock solid with that regard, and I don't think that Cal Poly is quite going to be able to match up with that, but you do have Hamad Musa, who's been incredible for the team. Stands right around about 6'8", 21.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 40% from 3, and Cal Poly as a whole, they shoot about 34% from 3, and they're very much looking to bomb it from 3. They take more 3-point shots than 2-point shots. If you look at percentage of shots that come from 3-point range, they're a top 10 team in all of college basketball, and for Cal Poly, they've actually shot only about 26.5% from 3-point range at home. That goes up to 37.5% in a roadside-neutral court environment. Hawaii's offense has nose-driven a little bit when they've been away from home as well, but I do think that we're going to see a little bit of positivity here. I do think that Cal Poly is going to be a little bit sloppy with the ball, but with the way that they are going to give up some looks on the inside to Hawaii, they're about 275th in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percent. Do you think that you get enough scoring for the over, and set Hawaii as a 6-point favorite? So with this line at 6.5 to 7, we'll take the points with Cal Poly, and I'm going to be in on the over. 8:49, 8:50 on the card. You see Riverside is on the road against Long Beach State, and Long Beach State is a mid-sized favorite here. 5.5 points is what you're laying with them. 145.5 to 146.5 is the total, and for Long Beach State, set them as a 5.5 point favorite. So we're going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement here. I was seeing a few 5s a little bit earlier. I would be willing to lay a 5. I even saw a 4.5 a little bit earlier as well. So do think when it's all said and done, we're going to be able to get a little bit of an edge here on Long Beach State. But that said, this is a UC Riverside team that right now the big kryptonite for this team is that they are just absolutely losing the turnover battle. For UC Riverside, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense outside the top 300, turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense outside the top 300, and they don't even grab second and third chances outside the top 270 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. So they're just squandering possessions. You've got a guy in Andrew Henderson who's been able to give you 16.5 points, shoots about 37% from 3-point. Team as a whole, country average, they shoot about 34% from 3. You've got DeAndre Petrite, who's been able to shoot 65% from 3. That's going to be seeing a little bit of regression there, but Osiris Gary, he comes over from Utah Valley, 13 points, 6 boards. He's been able to do a pretty rock solid job there, but when it comes to this Long Beach State team, I do like the way that they've been able to just really mix and match in terms of finding a way to be able to generate turnovers out of top 100 team. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they themselves outside the top 200 with regards to their ball security. And Long Beach State shoots only about 31.5% from 3. They're outside the top 250 with that regard, but you do have Gavin Sykes giving you 38% 3-point shooting, main scorer with about 18 points per game, and Petrar Marsovic, who comes over from Syracuse, 6.5 boards, nearly 2 steals per game, good active hands, nice versatility out of him. And then Rob Diaz, Isaiah Lewis, not necessarily explosive scores, 12.8 points per contest between the two of them, but a combined 2.7 steals per contest as well. So I do like what these guys are able to bring to the table for this Long Beach State team. They have been getting blasted inside. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they really push things to the inside, but they've also been outside the top 300 with that regard. But again, for UC Riverside, just a lack of clean possessions I think are going to be costly. These are two teams that are going to be looking to play at a relatively mid-tempo with Long Beach State. They are, in terms of total possessions per game, checking in more than that neighborhood about 134th. Meanwhile, for UC Riverside, they're about 192nd. So circumstance where I did set my total at a 147. I think that you get enough late game falls for the over. So like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 5 here with Long Beach State. 851, 852, Northern Arizona. They are on the road against Sacramento State, and Sac State finds themselves as 2.5 to 3.5 point favorites. 153 to 154.5 is the total, and for Sacramento State, I've set them as a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number now. For year number 1 under Mike Bibby over at Sacramento State, things have been a little bit less than savory for them, as just don't have a lot of outside shooting for this team. They are right now shooting 28% for 3, 350th in all of college basketball. They do have a guy in Mikey Williams who's been able to do a nice job doling out over 4.5 assists per game. I know that there are some people hyping up that he's going to be a first-round draft pick. I also think that pigs might fly as well, but that's at Prophet Johnson. He's been profitable in terms of helping him out. How about 15 points, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest, and with him, he does shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. And then you actually have Johnny Summers shooting 49% from 3-point range, about 9 points per contest. But outside of Summers along Johnson, you just don't get a lot around the outside end. This has been a Sacramento State team that's been quite ghastly with regards to their defense. They are currently outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're really taking it on the chin down low. But for Northern Arizona, their forte is 3-point shooting, as Northern Arizona had to replace so many of their top guys from a season ago. You've had Zach Davidson do a nice job being able to step up with about 14 points, 5 boards, and then Ryan Abelman, he is able to give you about 35% 3-point shooting, 11 points per contest. But then the likes of Isaiah Shaw, Arnie Ojanek, these have been guys that have been able to shoot it really well from 3-point range for Northern Arizona. Overall, with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, they're right now checking in about 148th in all of college basketball, 34.5% in a roadside shoot core venue. But for Northern Arizona, after last year, they were one of the top defensive rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. They're now outside the top 250 with their regard, and they have fallen to 297th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not a team that's really going to put you under duress or generate a lot of turnovers, and with this bunch, they have a tough time getting to the free throw line. And if this is a tight ordeal for this Northern Arizona team, 65.6% at the free throw line, outside the top 330 with that regard, do think that Sacramento State finds a way to get the job done, and I do think that there's going to be a lot of squandered possessions in a game that should see quite a few. You've got a Sacramento State team in terms of total possessions per game that is up to about 36th in the country with that regard. Northern Arizona, they're a little bit more of a mid-tier team, about 293rd. They're looking to slow things down, so made a total of 150, like the under, and with Sacramento State, willing to lay up to 5.5 with them. 853, 854, Portland State, they play those to Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado, a small underdog here of 2.5 to 3.5 points, 152.5 to 154 is the total, but with Portland State going to make them a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to take those points. It's a Northern Colorado team that has been able to do an exquisite job with regards to their perimeter offense. And when they don't take it from three, they're also a top 30 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. For Northern Colorado, overall a top 100 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. If you boil that down to what they do in a roadside shoot score venue, it becomes all the better as they become a top 50 team with that regard. And for Northern Colorado, you've been able to have Quinn Danker be able to give you 16 plus points per contest, shoot over 37% from three for a team that in a roadside shoot score venue, they shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball, and they get to go up against a Portland State team that just has had a very difficult time in terms of taking care of the ball. Now, Northern Colorado is outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this Portland State team about 248th in terms of turnovers per possession. They have really improved their 3-point shooting. They're into the top 100 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, and for Portland State, it's been a lot of mixing and matching as Scary Terry Miller has right now been the main guy for this team. He's got good versatility at right around about 6'8". How about 19 points, 6.5 boards, 4 assists. He shoots 48.9% from 3-point. And then Jalen Henderson, 19 points per contest, but he's only shooting about 26.5% from 3. But the ancillary guys like a Kessie Phipps has been able to shoot about 44% from 3-point. Bryson Long shoots about 38% from 3. Though Long has been dealing with a little bit of injury for Portland State. This is a group that is going to be looking to pride themselves on the glass. They're a top 100 team in terms of overall rebound percentage, but now they do have to go up against that Northern Colorado team that they're not really allowing you to grab a lot of second and third chances. For Northern Colorado, only about 24.2% of opponents' missed shots become an offensive rebound. That's a top 40 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Portland State, they do find themselves inside the top 175 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. And for Portland State, if they find themselves in a tight game, they only shoot about 69.7% at the free throw line. I think that is just enough for this Northern Colorado team to hold in there. Just out of 12, 153.5. Personally, I would rather have like a 152.5, 153 over rather than 154 under, but I'm going to be one to take a shot on that over and the points with Northern Colorado. 855, 856 on the card. Gonzaga is on the road against Washington State, and Washington State does find themselves as a home underdog of 17.5 to 18 points. 154.5 to 155.5 is the total, and I did set a total of a 161.5. I'm in on the over. Now Gonzaga, all of a sudden a top 5 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Big revelation there. They're a team that's still looking to push tempo though. 32nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Washington State, they're more of a mid-tempo team this year. They're about 218th, and with this Washington State team, they are doing a really good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances, and they themselves outside the top 250 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. As a matter of fact, for Washington State, they allow opponents to grab a missed shot as an offensive rebound on just 20.3% of their misses. That is number 3 in all of college basketball. Gonzaga not far behind though. They are number 10, so they are going to have a little bit of a advantage with Graham Ike being able to give you 15 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game. And for Gonzaga, they were a little bit cold from 3-point range to begin the season. All of a sudden, they've been able to heat up as you've had Mario St. Supri along with Adam Miller, both give you between 7.5 to 8 points per contest, and these two guys, between the two of them, shoot about 40% from 3-point range. Brandon Huff, he's been able to huff and puff and give you 17.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Tylen Grant Foster, Mr. Versatile, doesn't really shoot it from 3, but 11.5 points, 5 boards, a steal, a block per contest, just does a little bit of everything. And for Gonzaga, even though the offense might not be quite as explosive as it has been in past seasons, they're still a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But for Washington State, will break glass in case of emergency with ace glass, being able to give you 16 points, pair of assists per contest. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3. Washington State needs to take better care of the ball. They're outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but they're also going to give up some looks from 3-point outside the top 245 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. But they've been a top 125 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Emil Yalo along with Indy Okafor both give you 5.9 rebounds per game. Between the two of them, you get about 20 points per contest. And with having to go to Pullman, I think that home court environment is just enough for Washington State to hold in there. Semi-line at 15.5. We'll take the 16 plus here with the Cougars, and I'm in on the over. Semi total 161.5. 857, 858. San Diego is on the road against Seattle. Seattle finds themselves as a pretty mid-tier favorite here. You're going to be finding them between 9.5 to 10-point favorites. Draw this game 146.5 to 148.5. Made San Diego the underdog of 8.5 points. So at 9 plus, I'm going to be one to take those points. Now for San Diego, this team is just getting blowtorch on the glass. They're outside the top 325 in terms of overall rebound percentage, but they're doing a good job in terms of being able to generate some turnovers. If you look at them in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they have been a top 75 team in all of college basketball. They themselves are outside the top 200 in terms of taking care of the ball, and they face off against a Seattle group that has been middle of the road in terms of taking care of the ball in their home games, so outside the top 200 in terms of ball security. And with San Diego, it's all about what you've been able to get out of the backcourt. If you've got Juan Sebastian Guaracito shooting 39% from 3, 10.5 points per contest. Adrian McIntyre along Tunari Lane. Both of these guys give you 9.9 points per contest. Both shoot over 38% from 3. Tyler Johnson, 2.5 steals per contest. So these guys have been able to do a rock solid job there. Problem is, once again, you don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 3.7 rebounds per game. So that's been an issue. And this is a Seattle team that is going to be able to win that battle down low. And Seattle has legitimately been a rock solid defense. They're a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Seattle, they are a team that's typically relatively slow and controlled. They've been a little bit more mid-tempo this year, about 149th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. San Diego, 176, so they're very mid-tempo. And with Brayden Maldonado, he's been able to fly about 15 points per contest, shoots 38.5% from 3 points, but he is the only out of their top 6 scorers for the Seattle team that shoots about 32% from 3. Now, John Sokio comes over from Gonzaga, 12 points, 4 boards, and then you got Will Hembright, who's been able to give you 2.7 blocks per contest. The Seattle team does a really good job on the inside, top 100 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 75 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so they are a good force there, and they also find themselves in the top 50 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that sloppiness costs you an over, so I'm going to be in on the under, but also with Seattle, they shoot less than 70% the free throw line. If they're in a spot where they need to cover at the free throw line, don't know if they do so, semi-line at 8.5, so we'll take the 9+ here with San Diego, and I'm going to be in on the under. This last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 859, 860. UC San Diego is going to be playing us to Cal State Northridge. CSUN is a underdog here of 9 to 9.5 points. So last game, it is between 160 to 161.5. Semi-line at 7.5, so at 8+, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Cal State Northridge. Northridge, a team that's just not doing the same job in terms of being able to generate turnovers as they have from a season ago. And this is a UC San Diego team that they just go bombs away from 3-point range. They're currently a top 50 team in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, but I will also say this about the UC San Diego team. They're outside the top 250 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and right now they shoot about 36.8% from 3-point range away from home. That goes down to 31.3% in their home game, so they've been much better away from home there. Now, Leo Beth has been tremendous with about 15.5 points per contest. He shoots 40% from 3. Alex Shulkin shoots 40+% from the outside, and it's a San Diego team that has been very efficient with their offense. They're a top 55 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and this team is a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they're also outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, to their credit, they really don't put you on the free throw line, and this is a CSUN team that they've had a very tough time in terms of taking care of the ball with Cal State Northridge in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on the offensive side of things. They're outside the top 300 there, and now they're down to about country average in terms of generating those turnovers, but for this CSUN team, they've also been able to do a nice job with regards to being able to grab second and third chances. With CSUN, they do find themselves in the top 75 overall with regards to their rebound percentage, looking specifically at the second and third chances that they're able to generate. This team is grabbing about 29% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and your main guy has been Larry Hughes. Hughes, yes, the son of that Larry Hughes, has been able to give you 18.5 points. He shoots 41.5% for 3. The rest of the team outside of Davius Lurie, who shoots 36% from 3, they're all shooting below 33% from the outside, but Josh O'Garrow is able to give you 14 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. Josiah Davis in the backcourt, he does turn the ball over 4.6 times per game, bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball, but a steal, 6 assists, 14 points per game. Mohamed Fofana is able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. I do think that CSUN, with what they're able to do on the inside, top 225 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, that's just enough for them to hold in there. Now, CSUN also outside the top 300 with regards to their free throw percentage, but they're the underdog, not the favorite here. And with San Diego, they do take a 3-point shooting drop-off at home. Do think they get enough possessions here for the over, so I told 161.5, like the over, and 8+ here with Northridge, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-521, 306-522, UMBC is on the road against Bryant. Bryant is a home underdog of 2.5 points. So this game, 136.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with UMBC. With UMBC, I set them as more of a 3-point favorite here. With Bryant, they're just not doing a good job on offense. They're well outside the top 320 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They don't give themselves any second chances. They're 320th in all of college basketball in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and It's a team that, I wish I could put it any other way, they can't shoot. 352nd in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. Now, to their credit, that goes up to about 34.5% in their home games. And for UMBC, they're up to 96 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and it travels. They shoot about 36.9% from three-point in a road/tour venue. That is a top 55 mark in all of college basketball. And for UMBC, it's not a team that's necessarily going to be superimposing down low, but you do have the Columbia transfer in Josh Ojawano, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. You've had Jalile King along, DJ Turner up, and Armstrong in the backcourt be able to combine for about 28 points per game. And Armstrong shoots 42.5% from three. Ace Valentine doing a nice job. 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, 11 points per contest. Shoots 40% from three-point range for UMBC. They're also doing an okay job in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances as well. While this team is grabbing absolutely no offensive rebounds for themselves, this UMBC team, in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, much better than Bryant, who's currently checking in 318th in the country. UMBC, actually a top 75 team with this regard. And then on the Bryant side of things, you've been able to have a little bit of versatility in this team, as you've got a former top 150 recruit of Colorado who's been able to come in, give the team about 9 points per contest, and Quincy Allen throws in their 4.5 rebounds, but he's been dealing with a little bit of injury. Timothy Rodolski gives you 12 points per game, and he's actually a pretty solid player for the team, shooting 35.5% from three, but around him, you just have absolutely nothing. Brian on top of him, not taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on per possession basis. Not bad with their interior defense, top 175 team with that regard, but do think that the turnovers and the sloppiness is going to cost them. I do think that this comes down to some late game fouls, and for UMBC, I do think that they get the job done currently for the season. Only shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line, but do a much better job in terms of taking care of the ball. Did set a total of a 139. Neither of these teams generate turnovers, so should get some clean possessions here, like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 here with UMBC. 3-6-5-23, 3-6-5-24. NJIT is on the road against UMass Lowell, and Lowell is a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. So on this game, 148.5. This opened up with NJIT being an 8 to an 8.5 point underdog. I'm still willing to take the points here. I don't know why this line has just been completely steamed to high noon, but you know what, with NJIT, I'm willing to take it because I do think that Sebastian Robinson, who began the season banged up, he's starting to be able to just reach his peak mode. He's been able to give the team overall for the season about 11.5 points, pair of assists per contest, but you look at what he's been able to do recently. He has put up 20 plus points in 3 out of the last 5 games from three-point range. He's been a disaster right now. He's shooting less than 30% from three-point range, and for his career, he shoots 20% from three-point range, but NJIT has gotten completely blown off the glass. Outside the top 3 with regards to overall rebound percentage, I think he gets a little bit better with LRT Fulton being able to give you 10.6 rebounds per game. You've had Melvin Abacoli, hopefully I said that correct, comes over from Kansas City. He's out with injury. He's come back. He's been able to give the team 6 plus rebounds in 4 of the last 5 games. That gives this team just a little bit more down low in general. And then David Bolden in the backcourt, he's able to give you 12 points per game. And I mean, I'm not necessarily a stan of the NJIT team. I'm just really not feeling this UMass Lowell team this far this season either. They've been a little bit better recently on the glass after they were just totally awful to begin the season, but I mean, you still take a look at this team, 276th in the country in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. It's a team that turns the ball over well over 12 times per contest. If you look at just raw points scored on a per possession basis, 271st in all of college basketball. If you look at points allowed on a per possession basis, this is also a team that is checking in well outside the top 250 right now, about 311th, as you've been able to have the transfer come in from Texas State to be able to uplift them in the front court, and Austin Green supplying 14.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. And then you just have a hodgepodge of guys between 9 and 11 points per contest. JJ Mascoy, Xavier Spencer, but I mean, these guys really don't shoot it well from three-point range. You've been able to get Dariel Yepto to be able to shoot about 41% from three-point range, but it's still a very suspect team that's not taking great care of the ball. They're outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers as well, and they're getting blitzed with regards to overall percentages outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Now, I do think that this game just is not going to have enough clean possessions for the over. You've got an NJIT team that is currently, in terms of total possessions per game, clocking in right around about 208th in all of college basketball. So set it to a 145. I like the under, and I'm willing to take 5 plus here with NJIT. 3-6-5-25, 3-6-5-26. You got Binghamton. They're on the road against Albany, and Albany finds themselves as a good size favorite here of 6.5 points. So on this game, 140.5 to 142.5, and with Albany, I did set them as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Binghamton. It's a year from HE double hockey sticks, in which they've had pretty much everyone get injured for them. It appears as though Demetrius Lilly, who was averaging 9 plus rebounds per game, is done for the season. You can still have Zaire Beverly along Jemiah Quigley being able to combine for about 26 points per game, but they can't shoot. You've got a team that right now shoots 29.7% from three-point range. That's well outside the top 3 in all of college basketball, and they get just absolutely lambasted in the turnover battle. Outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, outside the top 340 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis on defense. That's big for an Albany team that's had a little bit of a rough go of it in terms of taking care of the ball themselves, outside the top 230 in terms of turnovers per possession. And for this Albany team, they're giving up a lot of second and third chances, outside the top 275 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Top 150 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, though. And you've been able to have Okuchu Okeke be able to give you about 10 points, 2 blocks, 6.5 rebounds per game. And then Zach Matalu has been able to give you about 9 points, 5 boards per contest as well. So you've had these guys step up, but all about Amir Lindsay in the backcourt. 37% three-point shooter, 17 points, 4.5 assists per game. And then Jaden Kempson has been a nice ancillary guy. Steal and a half, 3 assists, 10 points per contest. This is an Albany team that still leaves a little bit of something to be desired with regards to our perimeter shooting, but they've been able to really lock it down with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage here in conference play. They've been able to clean up a lot of those turnovers, and I think that that's going to be enough for them to get it done against a Binghamton team that they're just all sorts of banged up right now. It's an Albany team that in terms of total possessions per game, pushing a little bit more tempo. They're about to earn 47th in all of college basketball. Binghamton has been slow, turn 88th in the country, but you do have a pair of teams that have been very rough with their defense. Binghamton 325th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, Albany 334th. So circumstance where maybe line 10, I'm going to be willing to lay with Albany, and this had a total year of a 146. I'm in on the over, 306, 527, 306, 528. West Georgia is on the road against Stetson, and the Hatters are a 1.5 point home underdog. 152.5 to 153.5 is the total. So West Georgia is 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. You've got a West Georgia team that is going to leave something to be desired defensively. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 294th in all of college basketball, but not like the Stetson team is great defense. How about 340th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis? And Stetson's main calling card, really in the regime of Donnie Jones, has been three-point shooting, 301st in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Now, in their very small sample size of home games, they shoot 37.9% from three-point share, but West Georgia in road/core venue, they shoot about 34.5% from three. That's the top 130 mark in all of college basketball, and for Stetson, they're just not going to be able to match up with the versatility of Sheldon Williams-Dryden, guy that comes in from the great state of Wisconsin, 19 points, 9.5 boards, shoots about 32% from three-point range, and then you've got Malcolm Noel, who shoots 38% from three. He's able to give you about 8 points, 2.5 assists per contest. For West Georgia, they've been okay in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 200 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're not going to put you under duress, about 300th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But again, for the Stetson team, they really don't need help in terms of generating turnovers. They just do it all by themselves. As you've been able to have Ethan Copeland do a nice job in terms of giving you about 12.5 points per contest. Shoots 38% for three. Jamie Phillips, he shoots 35% from three-point range. These guys, though, they're not doing a great job in terms of taking care of the ball for Stetson outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. 345th in free throw shooting percentage at 65.5% as well. When you combine that with the fact that they're outside the top 325 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, this is just a team that's very much doomed, and you've got a little bit of tempo war for West Georgia. They're about 86th in terms of total possessions per game. Stetson 230th. Do you think that West Georgia goes out there, gets the job done, and I just question whether or not Stetson's going to do their part with this total. Semi-total at a 150.5, like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 4 here with West Georgia. 306-529, 306-530. Florida Gulf Coast plays also Queens. Queens is a 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 167.5. Semi-total at a 168.5. I do like the over with Queens. They're playing fast, but they're not playing warp speed fast. 101st in terms of total possessions per game. Florida Gulf Coast all of a sudden is playing at warp speed. At home, they're a top 45 team in terms of total possessions per game, and they're a solid three-point shooting team. They are shooting 36.3% from three-point range. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. For Queens, when they're away from home, that goes down to 31% three-point shooting. At home, more like 41% from the outside. They are currently 81st in all of college basketball, and this is a Queens team that they've got some most demonstrative home and road splits with regards to their offense in all of college basketball. Right now, they are scoring more than 28 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but still 53rd in the country overall. Got a Florida Gulf Coast team that is about 132nd in the country with this regard. And for Florida Gulf Coast, they're just giving up more on the inside than they did in past seasons. Now, they're up to a top 125 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, but you look at them in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, 244th in all of college basketball at home. That goes outside the top 275, and Queens is just getting lambasted on defense. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 298th in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage. And for Florida Gulf Coast, you've been able to get quite a few guys in the backcourt to really get it going. J.R. Konzinski being the main one, 16 points, 6.5 boards from three-point range. He's right now bombing it at about 35.5%. Jordan Ellerby shoots 36% from three-point range, and then You've been able to have Isaiah Malone on a very small sample size of threes, give you 8 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 55% from three-point range, but Florida Gulf Coast are really not going to put you under duress outside the top 175 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Queens well outside the top 30 with that regard, but this is a Queens team that they've been a top 75 team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. Chris Ashby shoots 40% from three, 12.5 points per contest. Queens not really going to give you a lot of second and third chances. They get a little bit land-based on the glass themselves, but I do think that Queens is going to be able to do just enough to be able to get the job done against the Florida Gulf Coast team that might have a tough time with the versatility of someone like Devontae Parker. 11 points, 4.5 boards, shoots 45% from three, and this year man has been the man, give you 34.5% three-point shooting, and I really don't think you get much defense in this game. Semi-total 168.5. I like the over-end with this Queens team. We're right now seeing them flip to being the favorite in some spots. I don't think that that's warranted with Florida Gulf Coast. I do think that they find a way to get the job done against a Queens team that's just been giving up points upon points away from home. So my line at 6.5. I'm going to be one to lay up Florida Gulf Coast, and I do like the over. Semi-total at 168.5. 3-6-5-31, 3-6-5-32. North Alabama plays host to North Florida in the Battle of North. You've got North Alabama as a 9.5 point favorite. It's all game between 158 to 159.5, and made my total at 162. I do like the over, mainly because, boy, this North Florida team is not great to say the least. They are a bottom 5 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They are 361st in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. This is a team that they're very much going to live and die by the three ball. They're a top 5 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three-point range. And to their credit, they do shoot 34.9% from three-point range in a road/shoot-score venue, but I do think that North Alabama wins this game from within. I set them as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number as North Florida is allowing over 41% of opponents' missed shots to become an offensive rebound, and North Florida has not been great. You've got a North Alabama team that has been not amazing with regards to their overall defensive execution. North Alabama is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but with this North Alabama team, they're a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, so should get clean possessions, and Cornelius Williams has been able to give you 12.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, rock solid down low with the block per contest. I do think that a North Alabama team is right now outside the top 250 with their three-point shooting percentage at 32%. That goes northward. Kanan Jefferson, along Dante Bacchus, they combine to only shoot about 30% from three, but between the two of them, 27 points per contest. You've had Dallas Howell shoot in the mid-30s from three, 8 points per contest. DeCon King has been able to shoot over 40% from three-point range as well. And then on the flip side for North Florida, you've got Cameron Oriole, who's been really the main guy for this team. Right now, he's been able to give you in the high 30s with regards to his three-point shooting percentage, 20 points, 3.8 assists per contest, actually up to 40% from three. And then Dalton Gayman shoots 41% from the outside, 9.5 points per game. But again, just giving up all those second and third chances for North Florida. They're actually not the world's worst team at guarding the perimeter, top 275 team with that regard, but they're a team that they get a little bit sloppy with it as well. They're outside the top 275 in terms of their ball security. I think that allows this North Alabama team to find a way to get the job done. Set my line at 10. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 9.5 with North Alabama, and you've got a North Florida team that's very much looking to push tempo right now. Total possessions per game. Right now, they're checking in 39th in the country, so set a total of 162. I like the over. 3-6-5-33, 3-6-5-34. Maine, they open to knock it. Maine down the road against Vermont. Vermont 13.5 to 14.5 point favorites. 127.5 to 128.5 is the total. Maine a total of 132.5. I like the over. Now for Maine, I believe that they have broken 64 points against 3 Division I teams thus far this season, and they are not fast. 344th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Vermont, not fast. 340th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but it's a Vermont team that has been able to do actually a very rock-solid job when they've been at home in terms of just being able to execute their stuff now. At home, they also only shoot about 20% from three-point range, but they're one of the better teams in all of college basketball in terms of taking care of the ball. Vermont, top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis in their home games specifically. They're a top 30 team, and the one thing that Maine has going for them is that they're not absolutely atrocious on defense. If you look at them in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, they're back inside the top 125 there. Now they're getting completely blown off the glass. You've had Ace Flagg, the brother of Cooper Flagg, really not live up to what Cooper was able to do back in the day. Currently for this Maine team, they're about 350th in all of college basketball in terms of rebound percentage, and for Maine right now, they're relying upon a backcourt that involves TJ Beal, give you about 12.5 points per contest, and nobody else who gives you over 8 points per game. And Beal shoots 35.5% for three. You've been able to have Logan Carey shoot 44% for three. Lone two guys on the roster that really shoot above 29 to 30% from three-point range. And for Vermont, you've got TJ Square, TJ Hurley, along with TJ Long, who who've been able to combine for about 26.5 points per contest. They combine to shoot 35% from three. Cussy Alden, he's been very versatile at 6'7", 17.5 points, 5 boards. He shoots 39% from three-point range. And it's a Vermont team that, three-point shots are to be had against this team. They are line teams to shoot over 36% from three-point range. Now, they've been a significantly better team with regards to their defense at home. Vermont overall for the season in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 261st for Maine. Even though they do generate the turnovers that they do, they're still outside the top 150, and they give up about 18 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. So I do think that even in a low possession game, you get enough, shall we say, scoring and enough efficiency for the over. So my line at 18.5, one away with Vermont, and I'm in on the over. So my total 132.5. 3-6-5-35, 3-6-5-36. Jacksonville is on the road. They're against Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas, a favorite of 8.5 points, 135.5 to 136.5 is the total line. Semi line at 12.5. I'm going to be one line with Central Arkansas. This is a Jacksonville team that's just not really getting a lot going on offense. You've only got really two guys on the roster that give you over 9.5 points per game, and Jacksonville very slow and controlled. They're about 325th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Central Arkansas, still a relatively up-tempo team, 109th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Central Arkansas still isn't amazing with their defense, but now they're a team that is in the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, and Jacksonville's calling card is supposed to be defense, 321st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, for Central Arkansas, you're not going to find a lot of three-point shooting with this team, but you are going to find versatility out of Cameron Hunter. Was their top scorer like 3 years ago, was injured, was unable to get out there at Wisconsin, but 17.5 points, steal 3.5 boards. He's been able to do a nice job there. And if you look at turnovers forced on a per possession basis, Central Arkansas in their home games, top 100 team with this regard. They are just really getting it taken to them down low. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but not the worst rebounding team either. Malachi Marble has been able to give you 4.5 rebounds per game. Ty Robinson, about 15 points, 6 boards. He's able to generate a steal and a half per contest as well. And for this Jacksonville team, you just don't have that guy down low that you're able to rely upon, because you don't have anyone really outside of Donovan Rivers who gives you 5.2 rebounds per game that's able to give you more than 4.1 boards per contest. Jason Thirdkill has been able to give you a little bit of something, but this is also a very unreliable team in terms of taking care of the ball outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They don't do the world's worst job of getting to the free throw line, but they shoot 66% the free throw line. They're outside the top 325 with that regard as well. Now, they are a top 225 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. You've had Jalen Jones be able to supply the team with about 10.5 points per contest. Chris Arias, he's up to 10 points per contest as well, but I think just not a lot to be had here for this Jacksonville team around the perimeter. They're going to get land-based there, and I do think that Central Arkansas is going to be able to generate some turnovers to the credit of Jacksonville, top 125 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. But that said, with the Central Arkansas team, I think that they go out there, get the job done in a game where I do think that they're going to be able to find some holes against the Jacksonville team that has not been necessarily the defensive team that they have been in past years. So I told 142.5. I'm willing to lay the number here with Central Arkansas, and I'm in on the over. 3-6-5-37, 3-6-5-38. Lipscomb is playing against the Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a underdog of 8.5 points, 157.5 is the total. And with Bellarmine, I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points, so at 9+, I'm going to be willing to take the points now. This Bellarmine team, awful with regards to defense. 362nd in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and if you look at them specifically in a roadside shoot score environment, that is dead single last. But for this Bellarmine team, they've been able to do a nice job in terms of flowing good, clean offense, as this is a team that does find themselves in the top 125 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Solid three-point shooting team, but they're also 4th in the country in terms of their two-point shooting percentage, and you've got the man that comes over from William & Mary who's really been able to be the main guy in Jack Karzinski. Stands right around about 6'7", 20.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots over 40% from three-point range. Brian Waddell has been able to shoot about 43.5% for three-point range, 15.5 points per contest, but for this Bellarmine team, they're just not going to give you any second and third chances. They average 5.9 offensive rebounds per game. That is last by a country mile out there in all of college basketball. And you've got a Lipscomb team that at home has been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Top 85 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in their home games. Now, this is a Lipscomb team that they themselves are a bunch that has been a little bit hot and cold with regards to their interior play. They're outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, outside the top 225 in terms of rebound percentage, but 6'10" Grant Hansman, 15 points per contest. He shoots about 39% from three-point range, and this is a good free throw shooting team. They shoot over 76% at the free throw line. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. With this Lipscomb team, they've been country average with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, but when they're able to get the ball around the perimeter in their home games, they've been able to shoot it relatively well from three. At home, they shoot 39% from 3-point range, with Ross Caladino being able to give you about 10 points. He shoots 41% from 3. Titus Sargunas has been able to shoot 39% from the outside. And then you've had Mateo Esmeraldo be one of the more underrated facilitators in all of college basketball. 7.1 assists to 1.8 turnovers per game. This Lipscomb team is about a country average team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They will not be under duress under a Bellman team that just does not generate turnovers. Do think that Lipscomb able to put up some good numbers with regards to their offense, but do think that this is going to be a relatively low possession game. Lipscomb looking to push tempo. They're about 71st in terms of total possessions per game. Bellarmine, they are right now in terms of total possessions per game well outside the top 250 with that regard, 290th, but I think Bellarmine executes just enough on offense to be able to help you out with regards to this one. I semi-total out of 160.5, like the over, and we'll take 9+ here with Bellarmine, and we wrap things up with 306, 539, 306, 540. Austin P plays those to Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky, an underdog of 7.5 points. Total this game, 154.5. Made Austin P the 8-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay up to 7.5 with Austin P. This has been a defense that has been very rock solid, especially in terms of generating turnovers. Top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Overall, this team is 67th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and typically the bread and butter of Eastern Kentucky is generating turnovers, and they leave a lot to be desired elsewhere. Well, they're just leaving everything to be desired right now. They are outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've also slowed themselves down quite a bit. You've got this team that is right now in terms of total possessions per game more in that neighborhood about 160th, and for Austin P, they become a little bit more of a mid-tempo team right now. They're about 119th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for this Eastern Kentucky team, they traditionally have been a relatively good team in terms of generating second and third chances, and you're just not going to get that out of Austin P outside the top 260. In terms of offensive rebound percentage, Eastern Kentucky, they're more around about 147th, with Montavious Myrick being able to do a solid job. He's been able to give the team over 14 points per contest. He's throwing in there 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game, so that's been pretty rock solid. Additionally, you've got Turner Buttery along with Austin Ball being able to give you about 11 points per contest apiece, and Juan Cranford, he's really been your main outside shooter. 14 points, shoots about 38.5% from 3 for Eastern Kentucky. They're a top 15 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range, a country average team with regards to being able to launch from 3-point range, but this has been an Austin P group that has been very good in terms of guarding the perimeter. They can be at a little bit more inside, despite the fact that Rashad Marshall has been able to give you about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game after a slow start to the season, but for this Austin P team, right now they're allowing teams to shoot just 29.7% from 3-point range at home. I think that that's really going to be able to help you out to the under end for Austin P. Just good versatility up and down the boulevard for the team, as you've been able to have 6'8" Tate McCubbin be able to give you about 12 points, 5.5 boards. He's able to give you a little bit from the outside, shooting 34% from 3, and then Colin Barker alongside your Collins. These two guys have been able to combine for about 30.5 points per contest, with Parker shooting 40% from 3-point range. They combine for about 3.5 steals per game, and for this Austin P team, I do think that they're going to do a pretty solid job in terms of being able to just keep them off the free throw line as well. For this Austin P team, they're a top 100 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, even with them having their heat-seeking style of generating turnovers, and I think that gets the job done and keeps the total under. So my total 150, like the under, and I'm willing to lay with Austin P, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at G._D1. Keep in mind, the RCM, the mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Otherwise, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I am with you guys every single day on this podcast with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.